Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LJL Officially Unofficial Podcast, episode 29. I am one of your co-hosts, Alex, otherwise known as Lexi, go by MaskedSwan on the internet, and today on this episode, I am, of course, joined by the tremendous man himself, or tremendous man. He's not quite a tree. He's not as tall as me. Alex, otherwise known as Nymaera. Hapgood, so welcome to the podcast.
Lovely to be here as always. Had a quick break, of course, didn't manage to get an episode out last week, but it just means that we're raring to go this time. Very glad to be back.
I know, right?
Oh, and as always, I must introduce Samuel, otherwise known as Initia1ise Hapgood, the serene man himself. Welcome to the podcast, sir. That's water, I insist.
A pleasure. Indeed, and I'm casting from, or rather podcasting from a little ways from my usual abode next door to Nymaera. I'm actually way back home doing some other stuff, namely rescuing my laptop.
Safe to have like stupid takes and for Sam to not like.
I know. I can't come and hit him.
No, you can't.
I know.
Nah, not unable to, but it makes a nice change of scenery and backgrounds. At some point, we will have to do a joint podcast in person, great. But that will wait off. Yes, we do have to apologize. No podcast episode from last week. Technical difficulties, hospital invitations, or not really invitations. They kind of just happen. You have to go to A&E sometimes, and a bunch of other things, but we're back. Apologies for no podcast last week, but we're back and we're going to be covering everything and more. So this might be a slightly long one, but we're going to try and condense it and keep it together as we've had more time to mull over what we're going to be discussing in this episode. But as always, gentlemen, and Initia1ise specifically, what is this podcast?
This podcast is about offering the English-speaking and listening community a way to get involved with the Japanese League of Legends scene beyond just watching the games, right? There's not a lot of English content, and we're here to provide all that content for you guys for free, and it's pretty good stuff as well.
Oh, we're doing it for free. We provide English content. Right. It's not just coverage, but a podcast. Nymaera! Papa Riot must be involved or somebody along these lines, right?
I mean, you've got to assume so. Otherwise, it's like a truck driving without any fuel in the tank. How are they doing it? What do they do? But it does turn out we are like the Tony Stark of the LJL. You know, we've just found a way to make it work. You know, just some mad science happening here. We are not supported by Riot or any of their affiliates or anyone connected to them, to be honest. We'd love to be at some point if you guys make a large enough noise. Maybe there's a chance of that happening in the future. And that's, you know, something to aspire towards. But for now, we're doing everything on our own. And we're enjoying it. It's been fun.
We are definitely indeed. And even if we do get picked up by Riot, there's a good chance if this podcast continues going, it will continue to have absolutely nothing to do with Riot. Because guess what? We say our opinions, lads.
Yeah. Woo. Oh, yes.
Oh, and
they are not.
Oh, yeah. These
with anything to do with the LJL brand.
Nothing to do with the LJL brand, including our own brand of the unofficial brand, because we are going to say stuff on here of that does not matter to anything, not even koi fish, though they probably wouldn't be interested in listening, I don't think.
Maybe we could play it.
That was an unusual choice in like creature to go for there. Why?
I recently learned that koi fish are just really big goldfish. Like in anatomy, they're actually just big goldfish, and I just had to try and get something about koi fish in there so I could bring up that fun fact.
I never knew that. Okay, I learned something today. I'm really happy. Cool.
Just expensive koi fish. So when you hear about expensive koi fish, they're not expensive koi fish, they're just expensive goldfish, and then you feel way better about not wanting them.
Fair. Thank you for that.
It's what I do, lads. It's what I do. You can find all of our social medias and Discord server for the LJL Officially Unofficial in the show notes, and also believe each of our faces. That for me, that's at MaskedSwan. For all the way over on the opposite side, it's at Nymaera. And for the man in the middle who likes to be in the middle and to feel like he's the most important, Initia1ise in the middle, but with a 1, ladies and gentlemen, with a 1.
There is no L.
And if you're still confused, you can just check out the show notes or the description down below if you are watching/listening to us over on YouTube. You can also find, if you are listening, this podcast on all major audio streaming platforms as well. Gentlemen, I'm going to go a little bit off script here. And I'm quickly going to give the lovely listeners a quick rundown of this podcast, because we might be going over a lot in this. And if they want to jump around a little bit, it might be more beneficial. We're going to be covering the VCS now not being in Worlds, how that's going to affect play-ins and everything around that. Initia1ise and Nymaera have been closely working with the VCS team, and while I work with the VCS team in a more background role as opposed to actually on camera, still we are all saddened by that news.
VCS English has been really good to us, so we've had some ties with them, so obviously this is relevant.
Absolutely. We will then be covering this 2 series from Stage 2. That's V3 Esports facing off against Sengoku Gaming, and then Crest Gaming Act versus Detonation Focus Me. I'm going to be giving our hot takes, a player of each of those series, and just overall thoughts moving forward for the teams that still have games moving forward. And following that, we will have our round 3 and final expectations. We're going to be playing a little bit different towards the end with the finals, as we thought it would be best to do. Well, I thought it'd be best to do it this way. It might go completely wrong, but then you know who you can blame. And
me, clearly, it's going to be my fault because I'm the older brother, so I am the one who ends up with.
But I'm the oldest.
That's actually true. You are, aren't you? So
yeah, well, like a week and a half or something like that. So yeah.
Yeah. How could you, MaskedSwan? It's your fault.
It's all my fault. As
I as the youngest, I reserve the right to blame each and every one of you.
Or actually, Initia1ise, we can just turn this on the head.
Yeah, he's the bratty kid who doesn't know any better.
Exactly, right? And he just has opinions, but he doesn't back it up half the time.
Exactly.
Just because he's diamond doesn't mean he's better than me.
Sorry, I don't receive messages from anything below diamond.
Well, fine. Good. Well, maybe I won't get good, and I've been getting really good at Valorant recently. I've actually been enjoying clicking heads recently. It's been fun to just
tried clicking their heads.
It's pretty good fun. And then to end us out, gentlemen, we will be answering a question which we actually believe is going to be really good, considering everything that's happened, as well as moving forward for the LJL as a whole. With that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, lovely listeners, and Initia1ise and Nymaera, let's get on to our first topic, and that is going to be the VCS now no longer participating at Worlds. We'll be talking about why they aren't at Worlds. Also, this will be affecting the play-in format, so now it's going to be changed. And there was also now going to be best of 5s, and you can also qualify for group stage without even playing in a best of 5. So. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. So let's first go off on why is the VCS now no longer going to Worlds, as this is something we have to discuss.
Right. So this is not anything to do with Riot. This has nothing to do with the VCS itself. This is to do with the Vietnamese government basically shutting the borders. This is COVID related, of course, and there was always going to be this fear around certain countries. I think Vietnam has been experiencing something of a second wave, if I hold it right, or at least
they never had a first wave. That was the thing.
Yeah. Right. So basically, they're just not comfortable with where things are. So they're closing the borders in and out. So it means the VCS teams can't leave the country. And that means they can't participate in Worlds because that would be being held in Shanghai.
I believe they're not shutting the borders going out. They're shutting them going in. It's just they're not making any exceptions to who's coming in. So so they don't allow anyone in at all. So they just if the Vietnamese teams left, they wouldn't be able to come back in. I believe that is my understanding of it.
That is my also understanding.
So I was under the impression it was in as well, but that makes a lot more sense, I think. So
actually, I did think it was just closed borders, but then to be honest, to me, it's like there's nuances and everything else.
Yeah, I think basically because they don't want the virus coming in, so that's the way they're blocking. I think is the way they're thinking about it. And also, like Vietnam does have a fair amount of expats and travelers from places like China, so they don't want to block people going home.
Yes, that's important.
But if you are leaving, you're not coming back for any foreseeable future, right? Any short period of time. So if they want to go to Worlds, they wouldn't be able to get back into the country. That raises a whole load of other issues. So it's not really tenable for them to attend Worlds.
Yeah, and due to that, Riot did also step in and then not disqualify them for that reason. It was due to the external reasons, which is why it was such a recent development and news. And this is not even something we would have covered in our last podcast. This is how new this news is. So obviously we've been working closely with the VCS guys. They reached out to us from pretty much our first few weeks of being the LJL Officially Unofficial and doing some English coverage. A few of the lovely VCS English members of the community reached out and were just like, hey, this is cool.
Yeah, and we have a huge overlap with their community. So I've been on the desk for their series or play days, good 3-4 times now?
Yeah, so between the two of us, for sure.
Yeah, so not only have I, and not have only, so obviously we've talked a lot with the guys, they've helped us out with our own production, and we've ended up, sharing some ideas with them, which they've incorporated in. So we've worked relatively closely.
Hmm.
They're a good bunch of people, and the
They've
region's
helped us
really,
with
really fun and
graphics
interesting.
and everything.
Yeah.
Like literally everything in some way has been
Yeah.
touched by those lads or
Yeah.
ladies.
So, and then for Sam and I mean, legit, I'm going to be on the desk tomorrow as well, right? So to see these teams, which are genuine contenders, I reckon that because obviously VCS 1 would have been straight into the group stage, VCS 2 would be in play-ins. No, these guys have had a real international tenure. Particularly for a team like Team Flash, who are an up-and-coming team, new team coming in, for them to miss out on both big international events this year is so crushing. So our hearts go out to them and to the guys that produce it as well.
They failed to they failed at the last hurdle both times last year. They finally beat GAM in spring. This is Flash, of course. No MSI. They finally lock Worlds, taking down GAM again in the upper bracket here. Can't go to Worlds. Like, it's just so heartbreaking. I mean, for Vietnam as a region, but for Flash as well. This was their year. This was their chance to shine. Hell, they rebuilt their roster again post-spring when things kind of went crazy all over again and still managed to get to Worlds. Like, it's just really heartbreaking.
It feels so bad. There's beautiful stories and narratives that went with the VCS qualifying and also expectations for the region and also the teams moving forward. I think is this the second Worlds that they've had 2 slots going into Worlds? They had it in 2019, right? And 2018, I don't think they had that.
I believe.
No, I think this is the first time they've had 2.
This is the first time they had 2.
Believe?
Did they last time just have an automatic
I'll go double check. You guys keep
okay.
talking.
So that's interesting because, like, I mean, this was a region that we've been poising this whole time as well. Is a growing region. They have one of the largest, if not the largest, server for League of Legends at the moment, and sadly, not seeing any of those teams make Worlds is very disappointing. However, to turn the leaf to the opposite side, yes, go for it, Initia1ise.
So it was, I believe, it was 2 last year. They had Loki and GAM went last year, so this is the second year with it.
Cool.
So I apologize.
Nice. So I was correct with my assumption. Nice. Yes. Wasn't completely talking at my ass. So let's turn the leaf to the opposite side. And while we are extremely sad and disappointed for the VCS teams, as if the LJL team didn't make it out of play-in / deeper run, we would by default probably sync to VCS as our casting team, and then normally supporting our own regions that we normally support, whether that be LCK, EU, or whatever. However, now that there are 2 less teams to have to play through, and now that the play-in structure has been modified for us, who wants to... Nymaera, would you like to run us through how play-ins are actually going to work now, please?
Okay, so just to recap how... And we're not going to go too deep into all of the implications.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff to go through, and we do have other stuff to go through today.
We'll save this for later podcast.
So what play-ins was going to be was 2 groups of 6 teams, and that would have included LCK 3rd seed, EU 4th seed, LPL 4th seed, NA 3rd seed, and then a whole host of wildcards, including VCS 2nd seed, PCS 2nd seed, and then all of our regular wildcard regions. With the VCS teams no longer attending Worlds, their initial group stage spot will be filled by LCK 3rd seed, so they're going to be bumped up, no longer playing in play-ins, and then also
so happy.
Yes. And then the
Big
VCS
one.
2nd seed.
Avoid Gen G or Damwon.
Yeah, so
T1.
VCS 2nd has been removed from the play-in stage, and LCK 3rd seed has been upgraded into group stage, so will not be playing in play-in. So instead of 2 groups of 6, it's 2 groups of 5. And what's going to happen in the group stage is best of 1 round robin, so you only play each team once, so you won't get to play them on red and blue side. And then in each group, the team which finishes first immediately qualifies for groups and gets put into pool 3 for their later seeding.
Sure.
And then the bottom team so the 5th place team is immediately disqualified. And then the 3rd and 4th teams play in a best of 5. Yeah, best of 5 already, and they will go on to play the 2nd seed from the other group. So in Group A, you'll have 3rd and 4th playoff, and then the winner of them plays against Group 2, and the same on the other side. So if you finish 2nd through 4th, guaranteed world's best of 5 experience.
That's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. And personally, we're gonna win it. We're gonna be number 1 seed, so we're not even gonna get a best of 5 experience, lads. I'm sorry to announce, but we're gonna 4-0, and we're out. It's done.
I mean, like, again, we won't go super deep, but like the point is, like, it's a best of 1 round robin, so you're not playing every team twice, which is always a bit of a worry. But you are still going to get 4 matches.
Yep.
And as long as you don't end last, you're in with a shot, which I think is
Anything
pretty
but
awesome.
last is workable. That's the way I've been saying it.
And if you come first, you avoid having to play off against some of these crazier squads. You are still going to be playing off against LGD, who are the 4th seed from LPL, which includes some names like Shie and Peanut. Like, that's there are some terrors still lurking in these groups.
Sam, if Sengoku win, you'll be playing off against such names as Pyrion and Blank world champion.
Peanut. I feel like I've seen that matchup before in Worlds.
Weird.
I know, right?
Weird. It's like history is replaying itself. But this is the first time that we will be seeing this sort of format for a play-in stage. So this is not history repeating itself, gentlemen. This is the first time we've had this. And honestly, I want to actually give credit to Riot here. They have what the LJL and how we do our play, how we do our average our standard season into playoffs. One of the best. Yes, I would like I would like a triple round robin, best of 3 series. Sure, I would love this.
Or something like that, yeah.
But Magical Christmas Land is combining LCK and the LJL together, which is just. We also need
another world, perhaps.
Yeah, another world, exactly. But you know what? I actually really like how playing's done. I actually really like it. It gives teams the best opportunity to make it.
Yeah, and I think the fact that, like, as long as you meet that kind of baseline of not coming last, you've got a shot.
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly fairly cool. And it's like the thing with best of ones, and especially when you're in quite small groups, sometimes you just get drawn into a crap group where you're against, like last year was like, what, Damwon Gaming were your 3rd seed? Like, like sometimes you just have these guys like, well, that's guaranteed 2 losses or whatever. And like, and that can really screw people over.
What was the,
and again, we're not going to go too deep, but like that option to at least show off a little bit, at least get a best of 5, at least get to that stage, I think is a really good thing for these teams.
What was the tournament that happened between Korea and China that they did? MSC, yeah, the mid-season cup. That just showed how bad a best of 1 series round robin can go. Well, like, and that can happen.
I agree with that, but the distinction between these is that it's a best of 1, which doesn't immediately eliminate most of the teams in the group. Because if it was only like, it was like groups of 4 and then 2 are immediately eliminated from the best.
It was aggressive, yeah.
In this, it's like you've got groups of 5, one of which is eliminated at the end of it, because then obviously the other one proceeds even though they don't get best of 5 and stuff. So 4 out of the 5 teams are going to be relatively satisfied with best of 1.
Oh yeah, they're going to be
right.
Yeah. And like, there is a skill to best of 1s as well, and actually seeding matters here big time, so you can avoid a best of 5. That's all great. Hell, if you win well enough, you avoid best of 5s altogether.
Exactly.
Like,
and a 3-1/4-0 will pretty much lock up the 1st and 2nd seed. So 4-0, I think, will be, if you 4-0, you're a lock. You will going straight into groups. You're great.
Yeah.
And then a 3-1 puts you straight into the qualification round.
Yeah.
So if you
there's a chance that 3-1 tie breaks 1st and 2nd as well. There is that off chance, but
the really rare chance. But then we also have 4th and 5th also have to play off as well.
Yeah, like there is that world,
which is cool. Honestly, I'm okay. Imagine that best of 1 tiebreakers, lads. Who would you pick in that one? DFM. I'm sorry. I'm not picking anybody else.
No spoilers, but I think they might struggle yet. We'll find out.
Well, they have to. They do have to get to that crazy situation. We will be, as we've hinted at, covering this whole topic far more in depth once we know who we're actually sending. We can then compare who they're probably going to be playing against. We can go far more in depth with our Worlds coverage and everything else around that. With our pre-World coverage, our actual world's coverage and then our post-world card. It's going to be a weird fucking world.
But I think the thing for me is that, remember, like I've been saying, well, we've been kind of saying this the whole split. It's like, hey, play-ins is really rough this year, guys, because like you're going to have to go against some really tough teams. Only 4 teams make it out of play-in stage, so... And then it's like, okay, so what are we doing with this? Now it's kind of achievable. We can see the route forward.
I mean,
go on.
At the very least, you're kind of cutting out, Flash potential, maybe the likes of Gam, who are pretty talented. You're cutting out Genji or T1, probably as well. Like, really, like you're going against the likes of Clid and BDD or Faker and Teddy. Like that's too highly.
It's just win more for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. This
so the way I view it,
it's really crap news for Vietnam, and you should rightly feel sad for them.
Horrible.
For the rest of the emerging regions, so for us here in the LJL and the likes, there is an opportunity here, and you're filling dead men's shoes, and that sucks. But take the opportunity you're given.
It's good. It's good. Yeah. It's good. We could actually get into groups, lads. We actually could do it.
Because before this news, I was pretty down on the LJL, actually. As much as I love this region.
You were the pessimistic, I was the optimistic. It was the way that we did it.
Yeah, and then we've kind of flipped around a couple of times. But
true.
Yeah, right now, I'm feeling good again, I think. Particularly because like it was overwhelmingly likely that VCS second and LCK third would have topped somewhere first, second in their groups. Now they're not there. That opens up the spot for 2 potential other wildcards to do something with that. So it's only good for the emerging regions. Hopefully it turns out and has some good entertainment with it. We have ourselves a good playing stage.
And fuck all the major regions who already have slots. Your 3rd and 4th seeds. Nah. They're going to get stomped hard by Sengoku V3 or Detonation Focus Me. We'll get into that later, though. We'll get into all of that later. Gentlemen, let's actually go on and talk about V3 and Sengoku Gaming. We actually saw their round 2 playoff games. God, it was a few weeks ago now for us, as we've actually had a week off, and now we're coming into this. So it was about 2.5 weeks ago now, gentlemen. But V3, how can I put this? Politely, dominated Sengoku. It was kind of one-sided in my eyes. I don't know what your perspectives on this. We haven't actually talked much, so our listeners know about the games, because we always like to do this on the podcast.
Save it for the podcast, yeah.
And it's content. But V3 look good, right?
Yeah, they did.
Yep.
So game 1, they did a surprise lane swap. Let's just unpack that there. Yep. V3 are happy to do good old Season 6, Season 4, Season 5 until they said no more Riot, and we're like, okay. V3 just lane swapped Sengoku, and Sengoku looks so lost.
They did, and a lot of that was... Oh, sorry, go.
So it's specifically being because they picked some of the only champs that can lane swap and kind of come out ahead rather than just trading even. Sion is probably the only top laner that comes to my mind that actually can play in that kind of 1v2 scenario and come out okay because of the way he can farm Raptors at level 1, come into lane, and if you need to die again to clear the wave, you can do it type thing. And then the other side was they had the Aphelios who can run up Crescendum and Severum and take turret plates top lane really fast.
Yeah, so there were a whole load of moving parts which went the way of V3 because they came in really, really prepared. They took Teleport, so they had Aphelios. Really strong as scaling AD carry, does really, really well when he's ahead in the game. They had Sion, as Sam was saying, really good at wave clearing on weak side, because even if he dies, he uses his passive to clear the wave, so they can't take turret plates afterwards. And before all that starts, he can take 2 jungle camps. He can die to red buff and then go kill Raptors. That's exactly what it did. So it was vertical jungling when you've got Lilia versus Nidalee. Nidalee is deprived of 2 camps, whereas Lilia gets the full amount. Nidalee is artificially put behind in that way. Sion teleports back to lane, has a buff, gets to clear the wave, and is really hard to dive. Whereas on the other side, you'd picked a Renekton Nidalee, and you don't get to use that, and you have to then survive a dive versus a set that went Aftershock. Normally, set doesn't do that, but if you're going to dive, you tank with him. He has the extra resist. It's very, very effective. Teleport on your Aphelios. He doesn't need to take heal for the 2v2.
True.
Allows him to go around the map. Much better to reset. Helps into the mid game. He also started Cull. The enemy ADC didn't do that. So you've got ADC who has got teleport and Cull, who doesn't have to get locked into a 2v2. whereas the other one has a Doran's Blade and a heal. They're getting more turret plates, their jungler's ahead, their top laner is more suited towards the situation. You've denied the Renekton Nidalee. It was so big brain by V3, and it worked really well.
And
really well.
We've said these guys are fantastic, like fundamentals in game, like the way they do their warding patterns, their setup for objectives, all that kind of thing has been really strong for this squad. We sometimes had issues just before playoffs saying, are you guys quite right with this patch? Why are you, what is this Jace Nidalee mid lane jungle 2v? What's that kind of thing where we're going, oh, is this patch going to hurt them? They came in so prepared, but in a really smart way. It caught Sengoku really off guard. That it got them a game, and it also means that other teams have to be really wary about how they draft because it means just pull this again. And what are you going to do? Like the fact they do have this and showing that it means that other teams have to be wary, and it means you can't set up level ones the way you normally would because you've got to be aware that V3 could pull off something like this again.
And I think to emphasize your point there for both of you, the one game that Sengoku won, I said 3-1. V3 won it decisively. The one game where Sengoku looked like they were going to win it, for a lot of the game, at the 30-minute mark, gentlemen, Sengoku were only 1,700 gold ahead. That's like that's a needlessly large rod. That's like a BF sword at that point. And at 30 minutes, that's far different. Yes, dragons were kept even. V3, even though they were behind for most of the game and always maybe slightly behind in getting to objectives, they were clawing at this game and they did not want to let it go.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me is that I thought that V3 might not come in as hot on the patch like Sam was saying, but they were really, really prepared. Really prepared.
In a losing game, they only go at 30 minutes, 1.7k down. Like, that's not a losing game.
And the thing is, so the strategy which Sengoku used to win game 2, which is the one game they did win in that series, they tried it again in game 3, immediately failed with it. And it's a really big thing for me because, so again, if these teams were to move on towards play-ins, if V3 were in a situation where they had to adapt, as long as they get to a best of 5 setting, they have shown to me ample proof that they can adapt within a series. They did it really well. I don't think they look put out of sorts. Boogie had one hell of a fucking series. This guy was great. In the game 1, we saw the Scion on Lilia.
So good.
Lilia had one point where they showed this really good ability to just know that they could fish for engages with the Lilia. They were throwing swell seeds out. Eventually hit one. Hits Pyrion and Utorimayashi, so both carries. Lilia ults them, and Scion hits them with the ult, with the extra damage from the sling.
So good.
So for me, V3 seemed to had. I mean, the Lilia was a huge thing.
Well, it was so good. Sengoku had to ban it in game 4, and then Boogie goes, "I got Nidalee as well, lads. I got more than one new champion." It's like
they banned it the one blue side game they had. And that's really telling.
And that's how scared they are.
V3 very, very good for me.
And it was all members, right?
On the other side as well, I think. Do you mind if I take this on to the kind of the next point we got written down specifically? Because there was. Sengoku looked like they hadn't changed all that much for the patch, and it meant that V3 had kind of had them read, like really hard. Like Blank and Boogie have been probably the 2 best statistical junglers in the league this split.
Well, Boogie's been one of the best statistical junglers in the world.
Yeah, like I've been super impressed with Once at points as well.
True,
like again, I hold my hand up. He's been my favorite jungler to watch this split.
Absolutely.
Proud's
been my favorite support, mate.
Like really impressed us as well in recent weeks as well. So we've got a lot of good junglers in the league.
We do.
But Blank and Boogie have pretty similar playstyles. They're both big Nidalee players in particular. Blank's stats on Nidalee were absurd throughout the split, but there was some issues like nearly consistently outside of that game 2, really, where Blank was kind of left out to dry by his team in early skirmishes, particularly around the early scuttle crabs or early invades. And like V3 would just dump waves to teleport in to back up Boogie and get him ahead. They'd win the skirmish. And from there, the tempo and the kind of map awareness of where the jungler is would really snowball against Blank. Part of that was sometimes Blank not respecting what his laners wanted to do, and that meant that he would kind of be going in without knowing they couldn't back him up. And part of that was the laners not really also pulling the trigger to come and help out and sacking their waves a little bit too. I know you did a little bit of VOD review on this, didn't you, Nymaera? So I'm sure you can pull out some more specific comments. But for me as well, like I think part of it is just like Sengoku solo lanes really like to play for their lane. They love their CS. They love the fundamentals. We know that about Sengoku gaming. They often come out to advantages early on just because they get big
But
gold
what did
leads
it
out of
get
the
them?
game.
What did it get them?
Well, it didn't, because they didn't get the gold lead from doing this, because they were like, their bot lane got slapped and their jungle got run over, so the laners couldn't do what they wanted.
Yeah, it's worth noting that in this series, the junglers played farming junglers all 4 games. Both junglers played it. It was either so it was Lilia for 3 games for Boogie and then Nidalee for the last one, and it was Graves and Nidalee for blank the entire series too. So both these junglers were playing similar style champions, trying to play in similar ways too, trying to use their use a foundation of strong lanes using priority to try and go and invade and take objectives and force people around. V3 just seems so much better coordinated around it though.
Just faster to defend.
Yeah, I think so. There was something which actually a tweet came up in the last half hour or something where someone was complaining about the NA amateur scene and saying like, hey, these are the 2 biggest mistakes they had. And one of them was about collecting waves at certain points, and that ended up kind of being really awkward because then it makes dives or whatever much harder or easier to
wave management, yeah.
Yeah. But the other one, which I think is really important for blank here, sometimes you just don't accept the situation how it is. Sometimes you can't do shit, buddy.
But he's former world champion blank. He doesn't have to play by your rules, Nymaera.
Also,
used to having people like Faker and Teddy and Bang back in the day who would just
shut the fuck up, Initia1ise. Shut the fuck up.
No, this guy is also Agent 612 for a reason. Sometimes he just doesn't accept the situation how it is and slams his head into the wall, but V3 are very willing to punish that. And because V3 have been very quick on responding to roams, very quick on knowing when their lanes can do stuff and committing to plays, they are on the same page. Not in a way which is too dissimilar to CGA in some ways, right? Very good at aggressively punishing, not necessarily in the same way which is as frantic as CGA, but you get that kind of feeling, right? Just very good at knowing when the player's on. And particularly in game 1, or was it game 2 actually? It might have been. Anyway, a couple of the games, we did see that blank kind of just went way too deep. And
that was
every other time, Pyrion was ready to respond. That was fine. But you can't just do that on cooldown for the entire game. Not in the way that they're playing. And even though some of Sengoku's lanes were just very good at CSing and got very far ahead, and actually at game 2, Appaman effectively just solo carried by getting super far ahead into a winning side lane matchup on a Gnar into Volibear. And they just played through that. You can't just do that every game. Obviously, V3 adapted to that. But yeah, I think that, but given that both these junglers play quite similar styles on quite similar champions, the fact that V3 played better to support that playstyle, and Sengoku were very rigid about how they wanted to play around it and didn't end up winning the series because of it, bodes well for V3, but not so great for Sengoku, obviously.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, Initia1ise?
I mean, the one play that really sticks in my mind for this one particularly, or like the sequence of play for me, was that kind of probably highlights this the most, was game 3. You had blank on the Graves. It was Pyrion on Azir. After they just won, playing basically the same duo. Blank goes to invade Lilia's wolves. He gets it. Azir comes over first. Boogie has to back away. He has to recall. He then goes to fight at Scuttle. Pyrion's gone back to mid lane. He's pushing out. He's just shoving. He's got priority.
Yeah. It's pointless.
Way to teleport in. It is then I think it ends up being a 4v3 in the river. You're also versus Callista Nautilus at this point as well.
Dies at that point
have priority over the bot lane Scuttle. Blank dies. They get a 2 or 3 kills down there.
I think blank blows flash and anti dies for first blood. I believe that's
something like that. Yeah. And it just means that suddenly, despite the early sort of that first kind of couple minutes, like brilliant, really nice sync up between the jungle and the mid lane, totally planned is what that was. The reactive play afterwards wasn't there, and they got punished before anything happened. Blank's Graves ends up behind. The Lilia gets hyper fed.
It's so bad.
So you know what even goes worse?
The list goes 10-3. Like, You can see some of how they want to play, but that's when it's on their terms. When someone starts making their own plays and making them fast, if you can't outplay it, if you know what I mean, just on a mechanical level, you can't do it and out macro it, or at least match macro.
What's the point?
Sengoku was just a bit too slow on the punch.
Yeah, so Sam, you know what actually gets worse than that? Because first off is the invade into topside jungle where Pirin comes over and it's like, oh, okay, but Sengoku come out, okay, well, that's nice. Then they go bot lane. NT Magical Journey's in, immediately dies, blank blows flash, and then loses Scuttle.
Yes,
then goes up to top Scuttle after having had his
Magical Journey in.
Then he goes top lane after having his flash blown, and then dies because top lane doesn't have priority. So Blank gets one steal, then loses flash and loses his life. It was bad. It was a whole
Thank
mess.
you for the clarification. I remembered it being bad, but I blanked on the Magical Journey particularly because they were pushed in, so they tried to out again, like artificially gain priority through Magical Journey. It doesn't work.
It wasn't ideal for them, but V3 were able to become victorious, and the magical journeys weren't always so magical of a journey sometimes, if you are on the side of Sengoku. Gaming gentlemen, we must unveil each of our player of the series, and I think it's fair if we leave Sam to last, because I think I know how this might be going. I will go first, and my player of the series, to no one's surprise, is Boogie. Nymaera, who's your player of the series?
We're boogieing together, Alexi.
Initia1ise, who's your one as well? Are we a is it triple tango?
The clubs may be closed, but I'm going to boogie on down as well.
All right, Initia1ise, as our jungle expert, why is Boogie the best player, and why did we unanimously do this? And while you do this, I'm going to quickly go pee, because I already know what you're going to say.
So, what's worth pointing out here is that, yes, there was a lot of support to make this work. Jungling is always a team game, but Boogie was a fantastic tip of the spear. His Lilia games in particular, it was great to see him on the new champion. He made her look very dangerous. He was hitting some fairly scary lilting lullabies, and he was reading what Blank wanted to do exceptionally well, and also reacting to the aggressive early plays into his jungle from Sengoku really, really well, and kind of countering the punches super well in the way that Blank and Sengoku Gaming weren't dealing with very well. They would kind of catch them off guard doing that, and we know he's a very good jungler. We know he's a very smart jungler. The Nidalee game in the last one as well, where he managed to get onto Yutori Mayashi's Ashe a number of times, was critical, especially because late game Nidalee, you feel like maybe she falls off. She's still got a lot of damage, guys. And if she can get onto an AD carry, she can blow them up. And he was doing that fairly consistently when things were looking a little bit tight. So great clutch play, great smart play, great reactive play. And yeah, there was a lot of team support to make that work. So credit to V3 as an organization, but there has to be someone leading the charge, and it was Boogie.
For sure. It's actually, I was just doing some VOD review of EVOS from VCS, and Sorn is probably the best Nidalee in the VCS. And I know you're always saying, hey, this guy's really good. He was playing Nidalee when Nidalee was ass, just really, really bad. But the real trial of a Nidalee player is, can you make it work in team fights? And this guy could. And but then I look at Boogie and he also can. He is not falling behind any of these international junglers.
No, he's better than most of them.
Yeah,
he's genuinely world-class talent. He really is.
Which is also why we have some aspirations towards World's Play-ins and stuff. We're not, we were hoping this isn't a sinking ship. But Boogie, he's obviously my player of the series too. The guy was the conductor of the orchestra and also the person banging the biggest bloody drum I've seen in a while. This guy just has picks you have to immediately ban away from him. There are just too many now. And it's not even like he was playing the stuff he was playing last split, like his Elise Echo things. He can just play everything, and he
played 3 games on the newest champion in the game that's allowed to be played in patch, and then forced the opposite team to ban it.
Yeah,
and that's without Hecarim being considered.
That's fucked up what he did.
And I also want to just really say this too, because remember we talked about the lane swap and the Lilia and stuff like this. Remember the day before this series happened, SK versus Schalke happened. And SK tried to do a lane swap, and they botched it. They botched it so bad.
It was so bad.
They botched it so bad. And this is like 5th, 6th placed EU teams, and then you look at how clean V3 did their lane swap, and you're like, okay, not bad. And when you think of some of the levels of the teams that are going to come into play-ins, I'm like, okay, maybe this shows that we're a cut above them in some aspects of this game. So yeah, and a lot of that was, of course, led by Boogie, just being able to be that ever-present farming jungler with so many options to go towards. Yeah, he's just really good, guys.
And yeah, of course, when we're talking about things like lane swaps and warding patterns and stuff, we're calling them fundamentals, but we're really meaning macro fundamentals, where it's like, how do you play the game?
What's the 101? What's the first?
Yeah, exactly. So that's not your mechanics of farming. That's not your mechanics of even like necessarily efficient pathing, which I sometimes kind of put down to mechanics as a jungler sometimes. Like, how do you ward? How do you lane swap? All of those things. The fact that V3 are really high level on that and looked really clean with it, beyond just Boogie being really good. Big thumbs up for me right now.
Huge thumbs up from Boogie, and I'm sure everything that you said was very complimentary, and that how he is just the best in the world.
He knows what we're talking about.
I assume you just gushed for the minute or two that I wandered off for a bit, and then I came back and I heard more gushing about Boogie. I'm like, all right, perfect. Good job, lads. All right, Boogie, player of the series, maybe player or jungler MVP. Who quite knows? CGA versus Destination Focus Meet was our other round 2 match, gentlemen. This was going to be deciding who would face the loser of V3 Sengoku. So we know whomever was going to be versus Sengoku, as we already had that match before. So, CGA, DFM.
Okay.
Well, it was kind of a stomp on both sides when CGA did win a game. But DFM then promptly stomped them 2 more games. Gentlemen, this was arguably, and I'm going to be truly honest here, one of the worst series I've ever watched. It was not a good series. And that wasn't on the team's fault or anything. It was just how one-sided each of these games felt. From the first few minutes, it couldn't even tease me.
I think I'm going to be a bit harsher than that. I think it kind of is the team's fault in a little way.
Sure it is.
Okay,
obviously.
I don't want to go too deep into CJ because they're now out of playoffs contention. They did lose this match, so they are out. They lost 3-1. Game 2, they won, and it's probably the biggest stomp I've seen in Pro League this season.
Yeah.
It was hilariously one-sided. We had 20... what were the KDAs of both players in Game 2? Let me have a look. Arya ended 14-0-11. Gango ended 10-0-10.
Highest KDA of that week.
In the world.
that week. Yeah. I like that tweet. I was like, I like that.
And this was the game which it showed why I thought CGA could go all the way.
Absolutely.
It could have the highest ceiling of any LJL team. They just couldn't pull it out in a best of 5. I was always a little worried of that, but this series really showed that they're not really cut out to do this at this time. They're not quite in the upper echelons of the LJL. Okay, I'll move it on to the point now, because we're gonna get to it eventually. A lot of it is still jungle issues. Unica had big flaws this series, and I know that we went really hard on Yoshi and Spring, but also when he had good games, we gave him a chance to redeem himself. Unica had some really bad games this series, and I don't want to completely slam him because of course he's a human too, he's a player too, but there are a lot of individual mistakes which we will have to dive into.
Oh, and also, in all credit, to Steel over on the side of Destination Focus Me. Initia1ise, I'll let you talk about Steel.
Yeah, he's been... So, his kind of Series 1 versus Burning Core was like, he was an MVP for me. He was really good.
Yes, yeah. Huge.
This time out, he was really good, don't get me wrong, and he definitely kept... But part of it was like, it wasn't anything flashy from Steel this time. He basically just battle-warded Unica, 3 games out of the 4, and the one game they lost was like everything had fallen apart around him.
And he also did he also had some really good thought processes in that game too. Yeah.
And particularly what he would do is basically Unica, he would just battle ward the river, and then DFM just won the lanes, and Unica just got nothing done. He was so predictable. The game 2 worked because he pulled out basically a ridiculously aggressive level 3 gank where he went buff Gromp into bot lane. And
how we actually got it. Yeah,
and that caught DFM off guard, and then basically after that, it was never allowed to happen again because Steel read it. And was it flashy? No. Was it smart macro play? Yes. And Steel was being more efficient, and he basically meant that he would just shield his lanes the entire series outside of the one game where Unica caught him napping a little bit.
And the one time Unica decided to try and play a different type of style, a lot of the time he was playing the more just kind of play for your team jungler. A lot of Trundle games, I remember, through Unica. Game 4, he decided to pull out that Graves, try and fight Steel on the axis of the CS department, and try and farm. And bless him, he's good. He's just not the 0.01%. And that's the level of talent that will be at Worlds.
It is. And if you're going to win a region, you can't have a non-factor jungler. So he played the Graves in game 1 as well. And that's
did he as well?
Game so I VOD reviewed that game on my own stream, of course. If you guys want to touch on a couple more pro games and stuff and have a look at some of the deep dives, I'm normally doing that stuff on Mondays. If you've got any games you want me to go over,
it's really good. I join him occasionally.
But anyway, I went over game 1 of CGA DFM, mainly because game 2 is almost irrelevant because it was so much of a snowball from CGA. Game 1 was quite interesting to dive into some of the mistakes. CGA once again picked Lucian bot lane. They had Lucian Lux, and they picked this Grave alongside it. And that's a lane which really has to win because you want to be rolling around the map, having this advantage while putting the enemy bot lane down. So CGA decided to go for a dive bot lane. We have Grendel set up beautiful. Chef's Kiss, 2-man bind under turret from the Lux. Gets his Guardian, he's got a shield and everything. He's tanking up turret. Then Gango dashes in, tries to get some autos. He takes aggro because Grendel stepped out, gets stunned up by Gang's Leona. He dies for first blood, and things get really awful. Unica was also there for this gank. He was on Graves, he was on the other side of the tower. What did he do during this gank? He fires a smoke screen in, misses his end of the line onto the rooted target. So he just whacks it onto the tower instead of onto the champion, so he misses that. Doesn't get a single auto in and runs away the other side.
50 damage with
like
screen
200
level 1,
HP. So that's already crucial mistake number 1 from Grendel, from Unica rather. Then he goes into top side when his lanes don't have priority. They end up facing off in a load of jungle stuff, and they have like a bit of I think it's like a 1-for-1 trade or something. And then Unica goes too deep, and then he dies. So that's another really kind of like just in the heat of the moment decision-making thing where Unica goes too deep and dies. Actually, I'm trying to remember if that was Nap that did that. Anyway, Unica dies in the top side jungle and things go really bad. Later on, there's an absolutely pivotal fight where Unica has the Shen ult, and he's trying to close down this kill onto Initia1ise, who stepped up too early. And then he flashes after Shen has already landed, so Shen can't follow up. It was a handful of mistakes like this and a couple of others. And again, I won't sit here like naming everything, name and shame everything. But just to give you a picture of this game 1, Unica felt really out of sorts. I don't know whether this is playoffs pressure or anything, but this was a real fumble in game 1. Just really, really fumbled.
And like, and credit to Steel for playing well. Credit for Gang saying that turret dive, for making the clutch decision to get onto Gango when he had turret aggro and getting the 1-for-1 down there. That's really good stuff, don't get me wrong.
So it's compounded by some issues.
But exactly. But should it have been that easy for DFM to get the advantages? Like
True.
They played the situations really well. They stepped up, but CGA kind of didn't. So at least Unica at parts didn't. And that was really frustrating.
And through that, Destination Focus Me just dominated the rest of the team outside of that one game where, it doesn't matter how good of a game that Gango and Arya actually have, because if everything else around them is going really well, normally these players flourish, and then when things don't go so well, sadly, it's normally put on Arya alone to try and pull a master class out of his arse and try and actually figure out a way to win games. And we've seen him do it before. Yeah. But this is DFM playing for playoffs, and they would like to keep their crown of the guys that go to Worlds.
Yeah. And Arya played well, but it wasn't like Arya, like outside of that game too, he went absolutely wild on the Zoe, like 14 kills or something. Was it
yeah. 14-0-11.
Like Seros stepped up and matched him. Like it wasn't like he was really out laning, which is what we've kind of grown to expect from this guy for once. And like he played well, don't get me wrong, but it was a little bit of a okay, so what happens when this guy ends up even? And that's always been a faint hint of worry for CGA, and I think it showed a little bit again in the series. I know you've got your own thoughts on that, man.
Yeah, so I mean, Arya was never a non-factor this series.
No, he
was always doing well individually. The question is, was he doing better than Seros and denying Seros the ability to impact the game like he has done against some mid laners in the regular split? Game 1, when he was against when he was Syndra, he was versus the Heimerdinger. His early game was kind of meh because the Heimerdinger with jungle pressure just keeps pushing in. We talked about how Unica kind of fumbled the ball in game 1. He did get like one shot onto Seros. He only died at the very end of the game. He was quite safely putting out damage. He did all right. Game 2 was the crazy one. We talked about that. Game 3, he played the same matchup, the Zoe into the Nico, and that was just like a complete non-factor. His team got 2 kills the entire game. It was 20-2.
Yeah.
That's not so good. In the last game, he did go like 4-0 or something on Akali. That's great, but it didn't stop Seros from doing stuff again on the Nico.
Fucking Akalis!
Yeah. I like.
Yeah. No, Arya was. I think he was the better mid laner. I don't think it was by enough to make any kind of serious difference.
Yeah, no.
Like,
Nowhere
like the
near
game
enough,
2 was crazy, really, really good. But you have to do that in like 3 out of 5 games. Didn't do that.
Yeah, like. And when like he's the better mid laner, but then the other side, like you're seeing like these 3-man pot blossoms coming out to turn around fights when it should have gone awfully wrong. Like, like that's good. That's a little bit scary. And then your top lane Nap is having a really bad series, and Ebby's having a great one. Your bot lane is struggling when the Caitlyn's coming out from Utapon, and Gang is playing like he's on fire and has been for a couple of series. Like, you need, like, if your mid lane's effectively kind of going roughly even, and then everywhere else is like, oh dear, and your jungler is like permanently on vision, it becomes a problem.
Is Arya in Elo hell? I just want a quick response. He's in Elo hell, right? Yeah. It's and the thing is, it's not even like the rest of CGA aren't that good. It's just like, think about the teams that are still competing. Where's Arya? I feel like he should be there.
Well, I think it's quite telling. The top 3 have all got probably the best 3 junglers in the league.
Yeah.
And up there with some of the best supports as well.
I agree. I mean, I do think, I mean, as much as I'm a fan of him, I think Arya is still probably the best mid laner in the LJL
I think
individually.
It's consistently
I think CJ has some huge staff issues. Their drafting has been...
Oh god, this series was probably the worst they draft, and I've had complaints with how CGA have been drafting since, well, how long?
I mean, I've been kind of nattering about this a bit, but CGA have had this tendency to, if they're... The way CGA... the way CGA win draft is that if they're on red side and they have mid lane pick for red 5, they literally just go to Arya and say, what counter picks this entire composition? That's how they win a draft. They basically stumble into every other draft win. If they draft on blue side, they don't actually know how to win a draft without seeing the entire enemy comp. So they end up losing those kind of points, even though blue side's really strong right now. They need to have a think about what they're doing with their drafting staff, because it's not working right now. Not really.
Yeah, and like on the other side, actually, let's give a little bit of credit to DFM. This was a lot cleaner than it was versus Burning Core.
Sure.
So much cleaner. Like things like particularly the mid games. Oh my days. Ebby was getting a lead in lane with Steel, the Renekton in Italy. And then they weren't messing it up in the mid game.
Their lanes are really
fantastic.
Really good this series. Their lanes were really, really good.
But then the question is just maybe Burning Core playing as a whole team slightly better than Crest Gaming Act, who might have the best mid laner, but the rest of their team isn't quite coming on top. Whereas with Burning Core, you've got 3 top level players. Imagine if you had Arya to that team. You can't do it because you can't, because you've already got Proud in there and you've already got you got one, so can't do it. But I'm just saying, man can dream. It's interesting.
I think Burning Core might look to pick up something like Ramune next year. Actually,
you know, that was the roster swap I suggested way back.
It was
filling time between splits. Yeah,
I just want some young, plucky, upstart Japanese kid to just come along and just start slapping everyone. That's what I want.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Like, also as well, for this series, Utapon pulled out the Caitlyn, and oh my days.
Oh, that was true. That was scary. And like, Caitlyn's like a high priority pick at the moment. So
such a DFM pick too, actually.
It is, actually.
The thing is, no one else in playoffs really at the minute has been picking it up for the LJL. Like, V3 went Kalista and Aphelios. Sengoku didn't really.
Oh, that's because he was banned on red side every game.
Yeah, I thought Caitlyn was perma-banned in that series.
He was banned there. So, like, but the fact is, CGA let it through, weren't playing it themselves, and DFM took them to town with it.
But then is that just a problem with Gango's pool of champions, which is something we have actually highlighted once before? While he's played a lot of things, we've only been impressed by a few, which, you can play a bunch, but if you're not the best at it, I don't really care. I'd rather you just be really good at 5-6 champions than be able to play 13 champions, really, personally.
I agree.
Yeah.
But then that is why Team Liquid are still in contention to going very deep into Worlds, even with their smallest champion pool in one of the smallest champion pools ever in history to make Worlds, which is a really
It's kind of crazy,
fact.
actually.
Oh yeah, super crazy. But I mean, if you can just keep drafting the same shit over and over again and no one bans your shit, why not?
FlyQuest beats you, apparently, is what happened.
Wild Toe, my boy! I always believed in Wild Toe. I'm never not going to believe in him. Gentlemen, shall we unleash our players of the series? This time I'll go first, and then you initialize, and then we'll leave Nymaera for the last.
Right.
As I gave you priority for the jungle.
Fair enough.
My player of this series, I believe I'll be slightly different, maybe, is Initia1ise. I thought he played really well.
I also joined you with Initia1ise. I think he had a phenomenal series.
Okay. Nymaera?
I went for his lane partner. I went for Gang, actually.
That's fair.
I nearly went that way.
That's fair.
I nearly went that
That's
way.
very fair.
Look, it was going to be one or the other.
Oh, 100%.
Remember we had this aside. I brought up this aside before. And you know it was when Yuumi was stupid popular and Ezreal was stupid popular. It's like, how much do you take away from a person if they've played really well and they've had a really good KDA, but they've been playing like the highest priority champion, one that you know is very strong? Like, you have to have a different benchmark. How good are they compared to Ezreal players when you're playing Ezreal? They're super strong. Initia1ise did have a lot of Caitlyn games. He looked really good. Don't get me wrong. He would have been my other choice. But Gang is maybe he started off that thought process within me of, is he actually the best support player?
He's got to go up a little mountain for me.
It does make you excited, doesn't it? If we end up with
thing, like,
if he can climb that mountain, buddy.
Because Gang's Leona, he's got the best Leona in the LJL. I'll definitely say that.
Sure.
This guy is really, really good at that. I mean, like I said, I'll go defend my own
You're not really defending much because we all agree with you.
Yeah. No, I think it had to go to one of the bot laners in this series just because the game with the entire series was kind of bot lane focused. And then you say, oh, it was bot lane focused. And you're like, okay, well, Gang didn't die in the first game. In game 2, you can look at his KDA, but playing Lux versus Blitzcrank is horrible.
I mean, there was Lux versus Blitzcrank and then getting hooked under tower and dying for first blood.
CGA drafted well one time.
Yep.
Yeah, like
it was the one where they were on red side and
fucked up.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and but I think that was the reason I didn't end up giving it to Gang. Was that game 2 I went, the other Lux game was great. That Lux game made me wince.
The thing for me is that it's like I said, I didn't VOD review it just because it was such a snowball. I don't actually get much from it. And sometimes, like, you just end up looking like an arse when you're trying to make the game-breaking play against, like, a 10,000 gold league.
Because it's just so far behind that every play you make is going to get you murdered, Yes.
And you're also playing a zero frontline team against a Blitzcrank, Zoe, Jhin, who just slaughter you. And
Jhin 4th shots and your health bar disappears.
Yeah, it's like, sure, and okay, don't get me wrong. Giving player of the series to a person who went 1-7 in a game, maybe not so good. But still, I think his Leona and his Lux in the other games, and of course his last game on the...
it's better than giving it to Ebby, who in that same second game went 0-7-6. Like, let's be real here, lads.
His Kennen in that game was very mediocre.
Or a mid laner that goes 1-5-5. Like, well,
in a counter matchup.
Yeah, not great. Or like I honestly, I think Gang and Initia1ise had actually more respectable KDAs for their role and how bad that game went. In all fairness, they didn't harden.
I think Gang had a really good eye for when he could catch people out here, particularly with the solar flares. We already talked about that first blood in the tower dive in game 1 when Unica misplayed it. Gang played it really fucking well. Anyway, right, that's kind of my opinion on that guy. He's my player of the series. But guys, go gush about Initia1ise for a bit.
He's really good at Caitlyn. Like, really good. Like,
really is.
And for me, Initialize, I don't know about you, but for me, because he got to play it so much, when I was comparing it retrospectively to the V3 Sengoku one, I was like, man, I'm like not surprised now why this champion was banned a lot. Initia1ise's a beast.
Yeah, and like, there's also something to be saying for like, it's all well and good picking it up, but I've seen a lot of teams pick it up and look very mediocre with it. You need to win lane with Caitlyn, and DFM largely did that with really serious style.
Can I throw something in here, actually?
Yes,
so
go on.
I was doing some VCS VOD review today, because obviously got that thing, and Gum played Caitlyn, and my main complaint about them is like, they picked up Caitlyn, but they don't play around it. Whereas I look back at DFM, like, these guys enable that pick so hard with the way they play, and it works really well for them.
Yeah, and Yutapon has been trying to carry DFM this whole split, and it's been kind of very hit and miss.
That's why they're 50%, mate. He can't do it all.
He just got to have the rest of his team not be training weights, and it looked so good. Even in the last game, when he had a Carly diving at him from, miles away, when he was into a Leona as well, like, he was managing to, cleanse, flash, stay alive in situations you just never have been in. And that as well was just very impressive stuff. So it was like, yes, you're playing Caitlyn, but you still have to take the powerful champion and make it look good. He did. And he also, even when he was being threatened by things which can threaten the Caitlyn, the Leona, the Akali, who can get to you despite your range, he looked really good defending it too. So.
I mean, to really back up also Gang as well. I mean, his itemization was gorgeous, may I add, for Gang. It was just always solid at every single point, backed up Yutapon. And what's even better, they lose in maybe the biggest stomp Nymaera has ever seen in League of Legends.
It's been a while.
This year at least.
This year.
Or even just this split, I'm willing to do it for. They've then run back the same fucking lane and just dumpster. Like, it didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's effectively what they do is we get rid of the Blitzcrank because that really, we didn't expect him to play. It's really going to Lux. That sucked. We make sure Steel is there for the attempted crazy level 3 gank, so they can't pull it off, so we get to lane in peace. It all goes off without a hitch. That kind of immediate call of, okay, this is what went wrong. This is the pick we can't deal with. Done. Was really good for me as well.
Oh, I have to say, a big thing. You're talking about Gang's itemization and stuff. I want to hit on that a little bit because, why is that important? Because you said that,
So the materials, that was the big one in game
the Mikhail's, getting Mikhail's Crucible and stuff like that. First time support, aren't you missing out on something? Well, sometimes it's really important to deny the one engage they have in the Leona ult. Just Mikhail's it. And then suddenly everything is fine. Sometimes just having that heads up awareness about the state of the game and what you can actually build to deny stuff. And we saw that from Ace on the Karma versus the Ashe solo engage from one of the games against Sengoku 2. And it's having the awareness to do that and apply it in game, just having that knowledge is really, really important. Just shows your greater knowledge about the game.
Yeah.
Also, I just really like Mikhail's when you're also against something like a Jhin. It's that's not an Ashe arrow. That's not on a long cooldown. Jhin W comes up really fast. That Deadly Flourish isn't that long a cooldown. And if you have to cleanse it and then you're kind of having to play safe for the rest of that lane, you can't do that. So having the Mikhail there as well, it's just another way to make sure that the attempted utility counterpick doesn't work the way it's supposed to.
I think we're going to be in a world, gentlemen, for the Worlds, where we'll be seeing lots of double cleanse ways for assisting AD carries. I think that's the world we're going to be in. Which haven't we already gone through the double cleanse world once before, and they nerfed it and changed it? It feels very familiar to me, like it's an echo of the past. It's we've got to run double cleanse and something else.
Oh, sometimes when you're against Ashe Leona or something, you're just
well,
let's not be dealing with this.
That might be the world we're going into, but gentlemen. The first match, and this is going to be interesting. Sengoku Gaming facing off against Detonation Focus Me. We saw Sengoku take a 3-1 loss, and it was rather one-sided. We saw DFM win versus CGA in relatively one-sided fashion. Now, we have concerns and asterisks to put next to CGA for sometimes with how they play in draft. But then we also saw DFM be contested, and I was almost correct with my prediction for Burning Core. So Burning Core tested them. V3 have dealt rather well with Burning Core. They've went one-on-one against CGA with them coin flipping their way as Nymaera love to coin it, even though it's horrendous analogy. It's where we're going with it now.
We know what you mean. There's a high variance.
Yes, absolutely. Part of the high variance is their pick and ban phase. It's part of the whole their charm. Sengoku facing off versus Detonation Focus Me. What are our thoughts on these teams just going into this series before we start talking about side selection, pick expectations? Are we still going to be on the same patch, gentlemen? There's a bunch to unpack here, as we've been seeing, Nymaera saw, Nymaera and Initia1ise, I believe, both watched it live, and I watched it later. But the LCK kerfuffle that happened, and
So stupid.
boys, where are we going into this series? Who are you picking as your team that you think are going to have a slight percentage edge, and then we're going to go into nitty-gritties? Go on, then, Sam. Go on. You go first because we know you're DFM.
DFM, but I'm willing to be I'm willing to be argued to the other side.
Willing to be argued. Okay.
I am also willing to be argued, but about Sengoku. I do think Sengoku have the edge. We'll call it an advantage, but not by much.
So CGA haven't made it here, so my pick'ems doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
So who do I think's gonna have an edge? I mean, V3's winning regardless, so it's all about... who do I think? I guess I'll plant the seed of 50-50, and I'll be swayed either way. I can be swayed either way. Let's talk about Sengoku first. Let's talk about Sengoku first coming into this.
Sengoku, right. Things we don't need to be worried about. They're still good in lane.
Very true.
I think that they showed that they were, particularly in the first 2 games versus V3, that, you know, they still had a lot of laning prowess. I think that Blank has still got his head on relatively straight. We did talk about that game 3, which was kind of crappy on the Graves, where his early game kind of went, what? But then his game 2 early game was really, really good. That's the one they won. He ended up 5-0. 5-0-4.
Oh,
played really well
yeah.
around the top lane. They understood their win conditions very well in that game. And they don't really have a sore thumb in terms of this lane is just really, really crap, or this guy's the only good player on their team, which you sometimes say about some like Burning Core, right? You know, mid and bot lane are not going to be lane dominant. Rayfark is the guy you're going to rely on for that. Or obviously CJ, where Arya is going to be the be-all and end-all. This is a much more well-rounded team. I think that helps them in when they need to change strategies and do something else. I think that's maybe something DFM which will force them to do. I was not particularly fond of how they didn't change much against V3, though, so there's a lot of things to be debated there.
So, I mean, at least for Sengoku, they have the ability to lose that series versus V3, not show anything, unlike DFM, who have had to start showing things. Sengoku can come into this with brand new, fresh, crazy ideas. Not defeated that they were going to lose to V3, but like if we do lose doing what we're doing, that's fine because we're not going to show them the new stuff. Do you think that's something that Sengoku would have done, guys, or do you think that Sengoku actually have
definitely have more than they showed? I just don't know how much more because I would have hoped they bring it out a little bit more against V3, and didn't show me all that much. There was, you know, Graves and Nidalee is nothing new in the jungle, particularly where I feel a lot of the new techs come, and they didn't pull out the Caitlyn for whatever reason, partly because it was banned. I know they banned it themselves, so.
Yeah.
They banned it on blue side in game 4, which is particularly troubling.
True. But then this is Yutori Murashi. I would expect him to be pretty good at Caitlyn. I believe he is a Caitlyn player.
So this is the same deal that I think there's something to be said for. It's all well and good if you are a good Caitlyn player, much in the same way if you're a good Kalista player, you have to be a good Caitlyn team to make it work. There is a manner of playing around bot side that is required, and that's why I favor DFM, is NT looked poor. He looked pretty suspect, and Gang has been on fire. And I actually think with the way that currently a lot of the bot lane focus has been really important around the world and playoffs and stuff, that's going to be a really big deal with the way Utapon and Gang are looking right now. Also, the fact that Sengoku's lanes are being a little bit leery about turning up to fights. I think that could be saying, because I actually think DFM have, outside of the game too, been pretty good about teleporting to plays when they need to. And Steel has shown me some more interesting jungle pool right now and has been really smart about adapting. So I'll say Unica didn't give him the biggest fight. So I expect Blank.
Yeah, that's my worry. I'm just worried. We saw DFM against like stringent opposition in Burning Core. Sengoku are a step up from Burning Core.
Yeah, exactly.
So CGA, then they don't push the right buttons to like really punish DFM. Yeah. So I'm just wondering how much we've actually seen. Are we bigging them up knowing that they were against maybe lesser opposition across the board? But it's not. But that's very not results-based analysis. I guess.
I'll be honest.
It's definitely like
before coming into playoffs, just before week 7, Burning Core, I personally had pegged them as a top 3 team.
Yeah,
me too. I thought they were really good.
So in all fairness, I think
I don't want to undersell them either. I think they were a good team.
I think forcing DFM to the 5-game series speaks volumes about the level of play from Burning Core and how consistent they are through Rayfarky once and Proud and Yuki and Yu-Gi-Oh starting to find slots for the team. They're not perfect for the team, but they facilitated what the team needed. They almost fucking got a W over DFM. How much of a different world do we live in if they do that?
Yeah,
and they forced it in that game 5 to the full 47 minutes.
And let's be fair, it could probably have been a 3-1 to DFM if they hadn't been stupid in the game 4, right?
Exactly.
I believe that one. Like whatever the Cogmore game was, I can't remember if that was 3 or 4.
That was 4.
Yeah, I mean, there was and I think largely there's a certain amount of there was some greed shown here from people that shouldn't have been showing it, and that's been tamped down a little bit. Mickey X's interview about the Fnatic series recently, which was very similar about certain plays with heralds in the Fnatic base that was really dumb. But I actually think it, unless Sengoku suddenly shift their plans to play around bot side, and they've just not been doing that, I think they could really suffer down there. I also think that Appaman was okay. He came back in on the Mordekaiser game, but he started rough.
Oh no, dude, the Mordekaiser, he was hard carrying up until the late game, dude.
Was he? I thought he started really off on that one and got back into it.
Remember, Sammy, basically the game turned when enough QSSs were built that he couldn't run over the entire team fight.
That's right. Yeah.
So,
yes, I'm with you.
I think that one of my reasons why I'm less high on DFM this split is that they don't have that same Ebby factor, where Ebby just wins them games. He has been better in that last series. Still a lot of questions.
Let's be real. Rayfarky caused huge problems for Ebby. And with Once's assistant, obviously. I'm not going to pretend that didn't happen.
I will say Ebby won most lanes versus Rayfarky. It was the mid game. Because actually Rayfarky had
but winning lane doesn't matter if you int the mid game.
Yeah, but that's my point. My point being Rayfarky actually had a fairly poor series.
Disagree with you.
Oh no, Rayfarky was pretty quiet in that series compared to what we expect of him.
His Mordekaiser was huge in moments for Burning Core.
That's true.
Which is something for Appaman as well, which is a comparison I'm trying to make.
I actually say I think Ebby's laning has been very good.
He had the Darius game too, actually.
I think his mid games versus Burning Core, awful, much better versus CGA, but we had our own question marks about CGA as well, which is why we're having this discussion now, right?
Yep.
And I think that if it continues to be bot side focus and Gang is playing as well as he is and NT isn't, I think that could be the difference.
That's a point, actually, because Gang, when they played the first time, when Burning Core faced off against DFM, Gang was kind of inting at moments, was playing Tom Kench for some fucktard reason, let's be real. There was no reason for him to be doing some of the things he was doing. He's not doing that now. Proud can't exploit that, which means NT can't exploit that. And personally, in my own tier list, I think Proud's slightly better than NT at the moment.
It's too now.
So then, actually, I'm now leaning more DFM.
Yeah, but that's where I can absolutely see how Sengoku win, and Pyrion and Blank are really good. So
yeah, I think that Seros showing 3 games of Nico and not it kind of feels like
oh, that's true.
Remember when DFM came back in spring playoffs and they came back in series the later series and stuff. A lot of that was off Seros, going back towards stuff which actually worked. Stuff like that. What happens if he's playing Nico and it happens game 2? And he's up against Pyrion, who is another very good laning mid laner, and he just gets dealt with. Now, what do they do at that point? Because it kind of feels like the time that they lost the Juggernaut match versus Sengoku in Spring Split, when they just kept going towards Syndra, which wasn't really working for him. And I kind of feel and they don't have free life this time. They don't have that ability to drop down.
Building so poorly on things like Azir. He's been going for weird poke builds into matches.
We went over that, but
not turning up to fights he should have been. I was a little bit underwhelmed by Pyrion, honestly, last time I saw him out. And that's obviously he won't pull it back and the coaches won't call him out and stuff, but actually, even the game they lost, I think Seros laned first 15 minutes pretty well into the Zoe, and then it all went wrong because the team fights happened, and Arya got massively ahead, but the laning looked good. And the game after into the Zoe, that was great. So that's that's good. There's the Heimerdinger, the Syndra, all these the Ziggs.
He's
all
played
these things
6th
are looking
champion.
good. And I need to see more than a dodgy poke build on Azir from Pyrion right now.
Yeah, personally, he's played 6 champions doing different things. He pulled out the Twisted Fate, which I was very happy he actually pulled out because I knew he can play it. And yes, he lost, but it was good that he brought that out. He played the Ziggs, obviously wins. Played the Kog'Maw. Let's be real, we all know that they could have won that game if Seros hadn't kind of inted a kill over.
Yeah, and Ebby and Seros hadn't gone teleporting into the enemy
Yeah,
team.
some are not playing well around globals at all, though.
They're not.
No, that's true.
They're not.
But
But then
Sengoku either. Like, they've not been responding
So
to.
you know how like you're talking about how you need to be a Caitlyn team or a Kalista team or whatever, right?
Sure.
You kind of need to be a TF team, and I think that even though Seros is all right on the TF,
That's
I
true.
don't trust their team to do stuff, and a lot of that is because like people like Ebby are not calculating plays well, and like he's kind of over engaging, and then they force things to try and bail him
That's a
out. In
fair
fact,
call.
actually, remember that big loss they had versus V3 back in like that one of their big losses. It was off of Ebby going too deep, and then the rest of DFM trying to bail him out. I don't. And that's one thing which I think Sengoku have been much better at. I think that Pyrian's TF is something which you have to. It is a must ban. Seros, I think you just leave it up.
I think both DFM and Seros specifically can just still play things like Ziggs and Heimerdinger.
Yeah.
And it's so fucked up because most teams just don't understand how to do anything against it. V3 have shown they know what to do.
Now.
I don't know if Sengoku
Like other people that
have.
aren't Seros are playing them, which is what scares me.
Oh,
like
that's
it's not just
fucking
Seros
terrifying.
playing because he's Seros. Like, other people are playing this.
And he's got the Nico, at which he just spams
and, like,
games
also, like, honestly,
infinitely.
DFM might be a suspect TF team, and they played too many ultimates to kill one person when they could get away with 2, say. Like, that was their problem. They used 4 ultimates to kill someone when you just need to burn 1 or 2. There was also this thing where, like, actually, I think DFM are a Galio team.
That never plays Galio.
That's the other thing. There's the other global ones,
which look pretty good. Yeah.
Did he play it in summer?
Yeah, they do play Galio Camille. So.
Oh, yeah, he had 1 game on Galio.
That was against Rascal Jester, right? When they just sent Cog just into the dumpster. And in fairness, it's Rascal Jester, whatever, right?
Yeah, this Rascal Jester.
I also think you don't necessarily get to do that versus Sengoku because, well, Renekton is the Camille counter, and Afman is a very good Renekton counter player most of the time. Of course, it didn't look great this series because game 1 happened. It was like, okay, right, they just ended up making sure that Renekton played weak side.
I hope Seros brings out the Anivia. That'd be dope.
That'd be cool. Yeah,
it won't happen.
I have some issues with Pyrian, but as long as he's not building freaking Luden's Comet as in games where he needs to go Nash's Tooth first and lethal tempo to just win team fights.
So then you've got to go. Who do you think's favoured in the individual matchup? Ebby versus Apperman. Well, I lean slightly on Ebby.
Slightly.
Yeah, slightly. Yeah, exactly. I agree.
But Apperman's been having such a good summer split so far.
Also remember, the one game. So remember, they had a bit of a weird. They ended up literally putting all the eggs in the Apperman basket, put him on the Narvos, the Volibear, and he just carried, right?
Yeah, so Blank just followed him around, and they were just like, "All right, buddy, let's do this."
Yeah, and so it's not Sengoku legit can play through him, and he'll just win in his own matchups, right? So it's not like I don't think he's gonna be like a complete liability. I think he's going to be. I think there are definitely some matchups he'll crush, which is what it's not uncontested.
It's not.
Yeah, there is a pick and ban. There's pick and ban that could affect that quite heavily. I'm really with you guys there.
Yeah.
In fact, in spring, remember Renekton was must pick ban from both teams because both top laners were crushing on it.
Well, and also both junglers play Nidalee. Well,
you've probably all heard about the inevitability of B1 Renekton becoming a standard thing going into Worlds, and Yep.
VCS does it. VCS
well, honestly, you go Black Cleaver Death Stance. Oh, you go, but not Black Cleaver Death. Is it Black Cleaver Death Stance or Blade of the Ruin King Death Stance?
Depends on your matchup, but normally Black Cleaver.
And actually, you don't play necessarily for the 1v1. You play for team fights. Become an unkillable team fight tank with lane pressure.
And that's the mod we're going to live in. Okay, so then let's quickly do Blank versus Steel. I'm favoring Steel a little bit, but I could also see worlds where I just give it to Blank wholeheartedly. This one comes down to pick, honestly, for me.
The thing is, like, obviously I'm going to have to judge them off of the V3 performance. Then I'm like, do I think I'm going to rate them less because Sengoku were playing against V3 and DFM were playing against CGA? So I'm like, I think I probably do favor Blank. think I do. Not much, but I do.
Actually,
Okay, so I think the way I view it, and feel free to disagree with me. I think if it was a 1v1, probably favor blank. I think that DFM respond quicker and play better around Steel at the minute than they do around blank.
I'm flip-flopping, lads. I'm flip-flopping. I'm actually going blank now. And you know why? Because Steel got shown up by once.
I don't know, because I think Steel actually beat once every early jungle. Every early jungle.
Not to a place where I'm confident that he's going to beat Asian 612. Like it's not to a place where I'm like, yeah, Steel had, but like Steel was reading like to the level Boogie was doing kind of shit to Hachimacha, where it was just unadulterated fun for Boogie and a horrible time for Hachimacha. I feel like if once is close enough to Steel, blank is just not good enough to just prevent him.
Steel really punished once trying to play the invade.
I think actually in that series, I think that Steel out-jungled once, and that was a big turning point because we expected once to do better. I think once made a lot of mistakes. I also think that blank won't be made. But then also, like, Steel's done this against once who looked meh in that series. Yeah. I don't necessarily think it was all Steel. And then he did it versus Unica, which we've also had those
exactly, which is what's so hard. Exactly. And like,
how do you judge it? How do you judge it based on strength of opponents?
So that's why I'm kind of
flip over.
That's why I'm kind of saying blank. Like, I think I probably prefer blank in the 1v1, but like if you include the way that teams play around their junglers, I think DFM are currently responding to what's going on a little faster to assist their junglers.
Sure.
Whether or not that continues to be true, and whether or not Sengoku take their learnings from V3 and have improved, which you hope they have, then maybe that won't be so true.
But then we have to do Seros and Pyrian, which, I mean, I'd give to Pyrian.
Yeah.
Unless he's on a Azir doing a shit build. Yeah. And then it's only... And then it's like, okay, how do I view Seros and his meh TF, or at least the team playing badly around TF, versus Pyrian's Azir? Pyrian has still been crushing lane.
He's still doing dirty stuff in solo queue. It's fucked up how he can do so well, but then do so bad on the stage.
I lean slightly on Pyrian, but I mean, Seros did fine versus Arya. I mean, game 2 was whatever, right? He did good versus Arya in game 3, right? He actually won that matchup pretty hard, and Arya's really good at those kind of matchups, even if they're meant to be counters. So it's towards Pyrian, but it's not enough for me to feel comfortable about Sengoku.
Yeah. And there's we've got a slight edge to blank, maybe a slight edge to Pyrian, slight edge to Epi. That's a bit of a wash top side of the map, I feel.
So then it comes to the bot lane duo, because we're going to do them as a duo, because they come holding hands until the support leaves them for the mid laner or jungler if you're on a Yumi or whatever.
Top lane.
Or top lane now, because apparently the support is everyone's bitch at this point. So... Yutori Moashi versus, with Enti, hand in hand, versus Utapon and Gang. I'm sorry, I now have to go back over to DFM now, because I've given 2 sides to Sengoku, and now I'm like, well, actually, that bot lane is really fucking scary, Alex, so I'm kind of going to go back there.
No. You know, I said I could be argued. This is the point where it really, really happens. This is hugely DFM favored. Hugely.
Yutori's not having the season he was having in spring. And Enti...
He was Mr. Consistent up until, well, he wasn't really.
Well, till the finals.
Yeah.
And this split, he's been a bit more flippant and and more quiet. But that might also be just how we've thought how Sengoku are playing through. Go on, Sam. Go on. You've not talked about them yet.
Gang has been an exceptional playmaker. Utapon has been hard carrying. And I think as well the fact that it is the little bit more bot lane focus, and DFM are kind of working around with that, even if it is sort of like, okay, 2 kills go to Renekton in the lead top side, then we teleport bot to play around their dragons, then we, even if it is start and then focus the other side, the fact that DFM's bot lane has looked pretty imperious, frankly, against everyone. I think the people I think are the main competitors for them are Archer and Reiner right now, and that's part of the reason why I suspect with the way the current meta is, it will be a little bit of favor just towards DFM, because they will happily pick up things like the Caitlyn pretty hard if you let them through, and Sengoku haven't really shown they want to play that right now.
No, but it is one of Yutori Moashi's most played champions. If you look historically, it's his 4th most played champion. So then it's like, have they just decided that that was something they didn't want to show they can play yet? Or maybe it was like, we're going to leave it to scrim only, figure out where the patch goes. And that's the other thing, gentlemen. Because of the debacle that happened in LCK and the debacle that happened last spring split, I have to ask the question, and I'm asking it earnestly, and I know neither of you know the answer. Are we playing on 10.16 like planned, or are we playing on 10.17?
I think because it's meant to be the Worlds patch, I have to assume so.
So we're switching.
I think it... No. As in, like, no, the patch that we were on for playoffs was meant to be the Worlds patch as well. I assume that is what we are playing on for all of it. Because I think Worlds was meant to be on 10.16.
It's not going to be on 10.16, is it? I think
it's going to be on 10.19 now, I think.
No, I'm pretty sure that... No, because like they'll just have to play on the previous patch. That's what they do. They don't just move up the live patch and stuff. I'm pretty sure this is meant to be Worlds patch.
Okay.
I mean, I read on the wiki that patch information 10.19 with Yone being disabled.
Okay. Oh, right. In that case, yeah, no, completely different. Oh, who the fuck knows that? No, who knows?
Yeah, that's why I'm asking the question,
Right,
lads.
yeah.
I'm like, I don't fucking know what's going on. 10.18 just dropped. I'm like looking at 10.17. Like, I barely played League over the last few weeks, so I'm like, what's 10.17? 10.16 is what I know, but like, are we gonna be on 18 now? Because, well, we can't be on 18, but are we switching to 17? That's my concern because of everything that we've had happen. We've had a break now. And I don't want to see another team get bullshitted because of a patch change.
I don't think it's going to be as crazy because remember it was like 3 patches last time, which was it was like 10.5 to 10.8, which changed so much. Like Varus had changed a load, and a load of the meta,
junglers and top laners and everything had changed. Like the meta had evolved.
So part of it as well as what Tournament Realm. So it's the patch that Tournament Realm is on as well. So if Riot update that's not on you. And as far as I'm aware, it's still 10.16. That said, LJL has shown that they change things around, partly because our playoffs just take a long time. So
they do, but it's not a 3-week break. It's only like a 1 week off this time.
Exactly. So I'm assuming 10.16, but I'm hesitant because we've got the kind of the prior history, right?
Yeah, and that prior history was partly due to the virus, and it was at the height of the virus at that point, especially in Japan itself. So it does make sense why we had to have a longer hiatus while logistics was sorted out for the players, the teams, and all of the production and everyone involved in bringing the LJL official broadcast to our lovely faces so then we can grab it and do our own thing with it, ladies and gentlemen. So, we've talked about each of the teams. We've talked about the playoffs, the players. We've talked about the lane matchup specifically. What do we think scores are going to be? And remember, this matters. I will ask you again on stream, and the stream one truly matters, remember, gentlemen, for points to be the best #1 analyst in the world. Who's winning? And what's the score? Wow, we're all in deep thought here. All right, I'll pull off the band-aid first as I was the 50-50 man. I'm giving it... I came in thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to give it 60% over to Sengoku. But after our conversation, I've got to give it to DFM. And I'm going to give it to DFM in actually a decisive 3-1 victory. They're not going the full 5 games, guys. We're not getting silver scrapes. DFM are playoff DFM. And it's gonna be... Oh, I think it might be more than just bot lane diff, depending on how the game goes.
Imagine saying that a month ago.
Oh, it's so absurd. It's so fucking absurd that I'm here. But this is where I am. Now that I've said my thoughts, I'm going to go to Initia1ise first.
Well... You've gone with the 3-1, so I can't do that. I'll 3-2 DFM.
We can both have 2 points. You can join me.
I'll go 3-2. So I was initially going 3-2. I thought maybe I'll go 3-1 to be spicy, but then you've gone there. Okay. So I'll stick to my initial thoughts. Because I still think Sengoku are a good team, and I think they are smart enough to have learned from what went wrong and hopefully improve coming up. I also think that Steel has been relatively uncontested. I think he's beaten the last couple of junglers, and I'm hoping Blank will give him more of a fight. Which I think should tilt it just a little bit to make it more like a 3-2 DFM with bot lane making the difference.
That's fair. That's fair. Nymaera, you've been obscenely quiet and in deep thought this whole time. If you're not quite sure, you can go back the last minute on the YouTube video and just watch his face go, oh god, this is such a crisis. Nymaera, who's winning? And what's the result? And why not? Why?
3-1 DFM.
He said it, I'm right!
Yeah.
Woo!
No, it's
sorry, just a second. Gonna
the anti-TFM guys are with him.
the players which are very key to both teams succeeding cannot be in more different form. Gang is maybe the best support in the LJL right now, and he is not good. Yutomi Ashi is not the same rock in terms of team fighting. He's stuck on the Blade of the Ruined King Ash hype, which is not going to serve him very well, whereas Yutapon has been best AD carry in playoffs. Blank is making some really boneheaded decisions. Steel has been tracking win conditions very, very clearly. Appman is inconsistent. Ebby is getting better and better. Even though it's still not there yet, he's still got shades of his former glory. And Seros has a larger champion pool than he's had to show. Pyrion has been failing in his builds. I think there are arguments for each member of DFM being more impactful than Sengoku's right now, even though I thought coming into the... I mean, I thought I was going to slightly benefit over to Sengoku, but no, I think DFM pound for pound, just more effective in the roles which matter. Particularly in support, I think. Particularly in support.
You're not hardcore enough, Initia1ise. You're not hardcore. But if you live hardcore...
I don't think it's going to be necessarily close.
I don't think it is either.
If Sengoku come in on the form they were in, and given that they had a long time to prepare for V3, they made some very rookie errors, right?
Oh, horrible errors!
Yeah.
Like, the thing is, the optimist in me wants Sengoku to come out
really good, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And then the analyst in me is saying, I still think there are these issues, and so I have to favor it to DFM. So I'm kind of ended up at that 3-2 space saying, I want a great series, and I want Sengoku to improve, but there are these warning signs which make me a little nervous.
Well then, ladies and gentlemen, we came into this podcast episode with well, at least I came in with this episode with an idea of where I was going into the next section, and now I'm going to have to make it up on the fly. We have all unanimously picked Detonation Focus Me, and if you are interested, this actually goes against the analysts and the coaches over in the LJL. If you have
split, but towards the end Sengoku, I think.
Yeah, it was favored Sengoku, 3 out of the 4. So CGA and Rascal Jester's coach both sided with us 3. But Burning Core, Hawks, and Axis's coach all decided to go Sengoku. Now, we don't quite know why. I believe they did actually go into stuff, or will be going into stuff into their the pre-game show, which they're doing, which if anyone out there listening wants to translate for us so we can actually get that information, we would adore that. But, gentlemen, we all think DFM are going to win. That means they're going to have to face against V3. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, lads. This is where my train with DFM must leave. As I'm going to already pull off my Band-Aid early and really explain that. V3 are going to Worlds. For me. In my heart of hearts, gentlemen, they're going to Worlds. Where do you currently sit with your knee-jerk reactions for this matchup? If DFM are successful with getting through?
Yeah, V3 look really solid. Just in all of their vision play, their macro, their wider strategies look more varied than DFM or Sengoku or anyone else left in playoffs or anyone who was in playoffs. Yeah, no, V3, it would be an upset for me if they were to lose to, it'd be such an upset if they lost.
Yeah, I think it's V3 3-1. And I think part of
regardless of who it is. I think.
Yeah, well, part of it, I think that like DFM have been relying on Gang and Yutapon to just be great, and Archer and Ryan on the other side are also great, and I think that makes things a bit trickier. And then on top of that, I just think the fundamental macro stuff of V3 is really good. Their reset timings are very crisp. Their vision control around objectives and where they're placing vision and the timings of it that come from those resets is just better than DFM. DFM tend to set up vision quite early, then back away and lose it, and then have to try and fight their way back into River. They've done it for years. I also think that while they have much improved around things like their second dragon, second herald, third dragon fights, it has been a consistent problem for DFM, and V3 have been very good there.
Agreed.
I think those things that they have improved on, I don't think they'll have improved enough. And also, V3 are a Callista team. DFM are not. You can play Callista into Caitlyn. You can make it work. V3 play around the 1 and 2 item spikes of Callista to make her work really, really damn well. They also means they can back up Boogie because they have lane priority with it. So
let's. I want to do an exercise here because I think this will be interesting for us because I think we're all kind of just like, well, V3 should win, and we're all going to be upset if V3 don't win. Let's harken ourselves back to when Sengoku Gaming was sitting in this exact spot in Spring Split, and we were optimistic for Sengoku, obviously. But at the same time, we were like, well, they could still lose to DFM or V3 when that was the round 3 matchup. And we thought that both of these teams could beat Sengoku, but Sengoku could also lose, right? Why are we so confident on V3? Is it just the whole team as a unit are just better at macro? Each of their players are better in role? Because I know I'm saying some things here which probably no, but they're just winning everything. They had one of the most dominant splits that the organization has ever had. They're a new org. Paz in the top lane is looking great. Boogie in the jungle's looking good. Ace is now nullifying everybody now. He is nullifying everybody and sometimes even winning now. Archer is maybe the best ADC now in the region. And Reiner, I'm sorry, Proud, but he's very, very fucking good. He's very good. It's very good, and I'm the support main, so I get to be hype about support players, alright? Screw you if you judge me. Yeah. Why are we so high on V3 versus when Sengoku were in this spot last year? Or last split?
So, it's a really dragon-centric meta, and when you've got a better jungler than most people in the world have any right to, and also play very bot-centric comps where mid lane just doesn't give a shit. They just go bot lane and go top lane, whatever. They just spread their pressure around rather than play for lane. Play Karma and go down 100 CS, who cares? You just got the items, and it doesn't matter, your early game went well enough. You're playing Callista, no one's really playing Callista. Well, DFM's not really playing Callista anymore. It's only really them that can get priority in most of every lane, really. Yep. And then Paz is just a role player. He just plays stuff like Sion or whatever he needs to, right? Occasionally he'll play the Camille if Ace wants to play Galio. Do all that stuff. It feels like V3 are just their identity is one which works very well in the meta, better than what DFM do, because DFM kind of need to survive towards the late game to do a lot of their like crazy zoning comps with Heimerdinger and all this other stuff. If they fall too far behind early, they don't really feel comfortable ever.
Okay.
So yeah.
And there is a world where Archer and Reiner come up against Utapon and Gang and break. They've done it before. And like actually what happens then, because V3 look like a different team when their bot lane's behind. Or when they try to play it around top lane, like that could be problematic. And then Boogie doesn't have the lane pressure he's used to playing around on the bot side, and Reiner can't come and back him up in the same ways. Maybe that changes. And also, like Steel versus Once in particular responded very well to like early jungle invades and stuff. So there is a world where that happens. But I just think that V3 are too smart at
Initialize. Am I just misremembering? But wasn't V3 the team that went like 8k behind DFM and then pulled it back?
Yes, they are.
So what does that mean for everybody, including DFM?
I mean, that's partly.
No, that was my question. What does that mean?
It means that V3 are a really, really damn good team, just in terms of flat out. Just in terms of like,
I think
there is a way that this team sets up the map after their resets that allows them to get advantage where they perhaps shouldn't. And it sort of means that, when people come to contest vision, they contest harder or have vision of places that people aren't expecting. It's just there earlier. Or not necessarily even earlier, more efficiently, I think is probably the way I'd think about it. Where as I said before, DFM have this habit of putting their vision out really early and then reset, and then while that's on, the other team comes in, sets up, and it's time for Dragon, and they're not there.
Okay, so you remember we were talking about how like Gang was really good at just understanding what he could do in a given situation with like his items and stuff like that.
Yes.
The entirety of V3 have been good at doing the same thing, particularly Reiner and Boogie. There were some points where they drafted really poorly, like their game versus CJ, they lost. But their draft just it had so little it could do in the early game because Nidalee had 0 setup. They could gank bot lane at like level 3 on first clear, and that's it. And they managed to pull off in like a 4-second window before the enemy jungler came in. They managed to get that. They managed to do that. They identified that, and they managed to make that game somehow competitive when it shouldn't have really been. The game against Sengoku lost. Actually, we had Boogie on the Kha'Zix, managing to find the few picks he could do when he could never teamfight on that, and still managing to do stuff. They're just really good at identifying when a fight can be won, what their champions can do in a given situation. And I think that they are better at a team at doing that than, well, anyone in the LJL. I'm just trying to think if there's like anyone across the wildcards that could do that. They're just very good at that aspect of the game.
They're very. It's part of it is how decisive they are. In terms
on
of
the same page. They make those decisions very cleanly and quickly.
That's what pulled them back against DFM was how, I mean, a lot of clutch plays, but it was also Ebby's overextended punish. Like, and then that's and then the call, and then they go from there. You saw it versus Sengoku where blanks in the bot side river, they've got we can punish. Magical Journey, excellent first blood go. Catch him topside, great. Like that kind of reading of a situation and responding quicker than the other team and more cohesively as well. It's not like just randomly everyone just blowing flash and hoping for the best. Like it's
it's calculated.
Yeah, exactly. But it's calculated really quickly. They just do it faster, and I think this is why I fear for DFM in the finals should they reach it. Is I think they have been relying on being able to do that themselves better than opponents. Steel in particular. I just think V3 are going to be quicker than them, and I think it's going to get them in trouble.
So, last question regarding V3 versus either Sengoku or DFM to you both. What happens, though, if one of these two teams clean sweeps the other? So, if DFM 3-0 or Sengoku 3-0, and it's in really good fashion, like controlled, calculated 35 minute in between times, like a strong, fast, average game time. Depending on who's doing that, obviously, and you can decide that for yourselves, will that change who you expect to beat V3?
If Sengoku clean up their acts and they don't make
it can be a 3-1
decisions,
as well, obviously,
and particularly if Appaman shows he's got some more picks to play and NC once again regains his form. If Sengoku 3-0, then I'd start considering whether they were once again like contenders towards V3. DFM, if they were to win 3-0 and they did it with different styles to which they've been playing with, and they have like Sarowski's playing more Azir, maybe they end up not playing so much Caitlyn because that's a very strong pick. Ebby looks good again. That's when I start questioning that too. It's not just the sweep, it's the manner in which they do it, and it can't just be about. Game time is always a good indicator, but it's like, what are the strategies that they're implementing to do this, and does it look like it would be good against V3?
Yeah, I think that's a fairly good read, and I will caveat that actually, you know what? If you manage to play the same things and beat Sengoku, or Sengoku beat DFM playing the same things, and they don't have to reveal anything new, then for the team themselves, that's great news. But we still then have those questions about, well, do you have more? We absolutely can assume yes. Like, I'm sure they do, but because we haven't seen it, we can't comment on it. And that's partly why actually it would be great to see new stuff and then to say, okay, we know they can do this now and look really good with it. But actually, for the teams themselves, they want to say, well, I hope we can hide this so we can surprise V3 in the finals with it. And like that's always a little caveat in there. But I think Al's pretty on it there.
It doesn't matter if they sweep, it's how they sweep, and if it's not in a way that we're not used to seeing from the teams, and the other team just kind of had a mental boom for a few games, it's like, well, we're still expecting V3 to win 3-1.
And I think it's also like, how do you beat V3? And it's it's make sure that Boogie has limited impact early, and then try and isolate the lane so they can't just come and group and skirmish somewhere.
Yes.
And if you can like pin bot lane, if you can pin bot lane back, particularly under their tower for whatever reason, you can kind of limit what V3 feel like they're able to do in the early mid. And they're still great in the late game and stuff. They're a strong team. Don't get me wrong. Like, we've seen it before. But if you can kind of show some of that, like particularly controlling the jungler, Blank and Steel are both very able junglers. If you can show you can do that consistently, that would be another indicator for me that they might be able to at least give V3 a challenge.
Sure. Well, X began us with a neat bow, and me and Sam just kind of gave our we just kind of gave the shallots along the top, just to be like, we're just gonna put some magic over the top, and look, it tastes 10 times better, ladies and gentlemen, 10 times. That actually now rounds us out, gentlemen. We have now covered in relatively quick fashion, honestly speaking, about play-ins, how that's going to be changing, V3 Sengoku, CGA DFM, and then all of our expectations for the DFM versus Sengoku matchup, as well as what happens upon whomever making finals to join V3, and our expectations for those finals being in one court decidedly. We have got a question which we are going to be using as our end of topic kind of normal. God, all right, let's just go into the question, lads. I'm mental booming here myself. I think I'm going down mid lane. I need to play ARAM. This is only one lane. From Acclaimed, who has already been name dropped, I think, a few times here, who is active on our Discord, and if you are interested, you can join our Discord and talk to Acclaim. He does stream as well, I believe, on some regular basis, so shout out to him and a member of our
morning, so I always miss it, but
Yeah, he says like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock people wake up, and I'm looking at him like, there's a 2 p.m, right? You can wake up there. I know, I'm a degenerate.
What a life we lead over here.
What a life. It's the best. From a pure viewer standpoint, coming into Worlds, what LGL team, what team out of the LGL teams would benefit the growth of the league the most? Accounting for everything, players, personalities, playstyle, growth, and etc. I'm going to hand this over to Nymaera because I know he has a caveat or explains this better than me.
So effectively, well, I mean, he pretty much puts it at the first point. It's literally just like, okay, so if this team, if it goes to Worlds, would get us the biggest viewership increase. What would be the best, basically, advertisement and ambassador for our region? And it does say out of all teams. I know that, Sam, we were talking about it a little bit. We kind of just touched base about it. And, you said you'd rather talk about, like, the ones that are still in contention.
Yeah.
I'd like to lay down some arguments for another couple of teams, too. Just because I think it would be nice to kind of, like, tread some ground there. It's just like, okay, we've got our LGL teams. We send this to Worlds. And, of course, it does kind of come with form and stuff like that, too, right? You don't want to send, like, an absolute ass team to Worlds where they get blasted. But if these teams, in a given situation, and we can give caveats and whatever, which one would be best for viewership for the LGL going forwards?
Yeah. So, I mean...
Go for it, Sam. Go for it.
So, like, the only reason I would potentially caveat it is it says, there is the part of this question which says coming into Worlds. And, actually, it's all well and good throwing the hypotheticals, but they aren't going to happen anymore. There are 3 teams that could go to Worlds. And in some ways, it's like, okay, well, those are the teams we have to work with right now. And I would rather focus on what, the actual potential outcomes rather than ones that could have happened in another world.
To get the best of both worlds, as we will talk more about the 3 that we know can make it. Alex, why don't you briefly talk about the 1 or 2 or any other amount of teams that you would like to at least say they might help in some way, for their unique reason?
I think you can make reasonable answers for the top 4 teams in playoffs.
So CGA as well.
So that's yes. So the team that isn't in contention would be CGA. I think it's worth mentioning them because they do have a unique thing to them, and obviously I talk about them a lot, so I'll be in position.
Well, and Arya also is a player.
Exactly. Yes. So that would be DFM, V3, Sengoku, and CGA. Do you want me to go? I don't want to like steal everything from you guys, but
no. I just wanted to give this a little section if you wanted to cover any teams that aren't the major 3.
Okay, so we'll go through the other 3 teams first. With CGA, they're not in contention. Why would I think they would be and have a serious actual contention for being the best team here. Why would they be the best ambassador and advertisement for our region? You look at teams like that have been very popular and actually remembered in the past from wildcard regions. Which teams do you actually remember? TPA. That's one, right? Although that's a little bit different. Season 2 is just a bit of a... wildcard wasn't necessarily a thing in Season 2 because we didn't have the regions completely set up.
I missed
We
TPA.
had Kaboom in Season 4.
Yeah.
We had maybe INTZ from Season 5.
Everyone knows GAM. Everyone knows GAM.
Everyone knows GAM. And then we look at Albus Nox Luna. What do these guys have in common? Weren't necessarily the best teams. Not always. But they did put on a hell of a show and they upset. They upset someone in person. So, and the thing is that they upset someone actually quite notable. Albus Nox Luna beat Rox Tigers. We had Kaboom beating the #1 seed from Europe in Season 4. Hugely competitive. GAM, they'd beaten the likes of was it G2 that they ended up beating?
They got a level 6 Nocturne earlier than any.
Oh, that's Fnatic, that's who they placed.
Yeah. Like, and part of it is, like, it's not just upsets, but it's also the manner in which they did it. There was just some absolute beauty where they just played their sides. Like, I'm going to play Brand Support, Anivia, Poppy.
Put it this way, right? You take this team of CGA, you put them into group stage, and they do what GAM did to Fnatic, or what CGA did to DFM in Game 2, where they had a 14-kill Zoe, and they do that versus LGD in the playing stage. They only have to do that once. They can shit the bed for the rest of the game, so they can do that once. Everyone remembers that game. That is the post which gets to the top of League of Legends, all gets onto like everything and gets all the awards. That's the game where you're like, okay, you remember these guys because of one moment of brilliance. One moment of brilliance, and sometimes that's enough to say, ooh, I wonder what those players are doing now, like a year or two into the future. You remember that.
I'll be honest.
That'd be my argument for CGA.
And I think CGA, personally, out of the 8 teams, well, not counting the top 3 teams that are currently in, CGA is the only team, personally, I could see an argument for. I think the other teams, while there are hopes, I mean, Axis definitely could have some interesting stuff. Burning Core and the Hawks are currently the other 3 that are really coming to mind, where I'm like, ooh, they could do some crazy stuff. Rascal Gesture, if they actually have their main roster playing, again, you can make arguments because they are the mad scientists of the LJL, that they could bring that to Worlds, and then you're like, ooh, what are they doing?
That's name brand, right? They've got Ninja. I do actually think there's a reason. Actually, I kind of forgot about that. You could make a reasonable argument for Axis for the Cinderella story too, right?
But
and they've got an English. And the other thing, the only reason I would potentially argue for Axis would have been they have an English speaker in Corporal, which is great news for building so
much brand recognition,
personality that's really good, like beyond just play on the screen, which could be pretty huge. So, I mean, that's partly how Albus Nox Luga got famous as well, with Licrit talking to people, right?
Yeah, actually being able to interview a player from that region is huge, and someone like Corporal could just get interviewed and just be like, I can speak English perfectly fine. I'm actually an Aussie. I'm half Aussie, half Japanese. It's like, and everyone goes, oh, he's an Aussie. Wait, an Aussie made Worlds and isn't a mid laner for a team? And then suddenly, no. CGA, only team in my head that can really do that. Sure, Axis, and then other teams, if they can get a story going first in the LJL, because that's what's important, right? You have to build a story. Axis started that with the Cinderella, and then sadly they started it again a bit too late to really have that going. DFM actually currently have a story going.
They do.
They always do.
I think they have a bit of a story. Plus, they've got some previous name brand recognition. People who've been towards like, oh, these are the guys who came beforehand. When I did a little interview with Matthias as well, he's like, I know DFM. Great. So does everybody else. So that kind of helps as well. Actually, if DFM come, people already know them, and then they do well. That is great news for the league because it's already got a brand. These guys are kind of staples of the international stage. If they then come in and look good, hey, that's pretty great. I mean, last time Ebby got the solo kill, right? That's pretty remembered.
Well, I mean, I remember Dom talking about, I don't know, Dom was talking about it on stream or face check or something. It was like, oh man, do you remember like when you played like 5 games versus DFM or something like that? I was like, oh, remember the last time Heimening was played? Oh yeah, wasn't that Dead FM? So like, it's been the DFM team which has been name dropped by some famous streamers, stuff like that.
I mean, also could mean dead FM. I mean, at Worlds, I think that's fair. That's fair. I'm willing to accept that one.
Oh, Det FM. Det FM.
and then,
But
like-
yes, okay, fine. I accept the flub.
It's fine. It's fine. In my head, it was
Freudian slip.
in my head, it's fine. I don't mind. And think about it, their narrative coming into this is they are now not the kings. They had their worst split ever, and that's something that analysts and casters can really hammer in. Because then if they perform well, it's like, guys, they had to lose their crown to regain it and realize how much it meant to them.
They had to run from round 1 to get to that.
That's running a gauntlet. That's doing the run. That's doing the work. And then suddenly, if they do it at Worlds,
Looks good.
looks good for us. Let's talk about Sengoku. Because
You've got Blank Empyrean, you've got XSKT. There's your brand. There are your players. That's an ex-world champion. And it wouldn't be going English viewers, but Korean fans love their Korean players. SKT is such a massive, well, T1 now, but you know.
Sure. But do you think that would actually grow our viewer base?
Oh, Blank would, yeah. Blank
Yeah, I
already
think
has, actually.
remember, like, the viewer times for LJL are really good for Korea.
Sure.
Really good for viewing Korea. Like it's like perfect time of day. And like
No,
I think
I've seen Reddit threads asking about. Like, I mean, there was like
I think
big one
Blank
when
is
the trade happened.
Blank is the only one that's super well known, right?
Yes.
Pyrian is known, but Blank is the one because he used to play and he had that great game and he also had that int game and but everyone is more familiar with Blank.
Yeah, I mean, Pyrian was in Europe last year, so he's still around. But then you've got like, you'll have these posts every so often, like the season 4 world champions. Where are they now? The season 5, the season 6. That's where Blank comes in. This guy's very well known, right, in that kind of sense, and people will overshadow some of his stuff in later season stuff. But this guy had some serious spring like streaks of form.
Oh yeah.
Where he's very much remembered for. So yeah, this guy does bring with him a huge amount of name value, and that would be what Sengoku bring. My caveat to Sengoku is that they're kind of boring comparative to some of the teams, compared to other wild cards which have gotten famous in the past. They're very by the book, and that's great in some ways. Sometimes they have Pyrian popping off on Zoe, sometimes Blank has great Graves games, but they're not as dynamic as you might expect from the best wildcard teams out there. So maybe that detracts from their bid a little bit.
So do you guys think for Sengoku to really increase like our viewership and just viewership in general for an interest in the LJL, do they need to then get out of group stages?
Yes. Need to get to groups.
No. They first have to get to groups. But are they still even taken seriously, or are they seen as, oh well, that wildcard team got in because extra places gets in. Well, they got Blank. I know that guy. He's pretty good. They make it in. If they have some flubbing games, are they just kind of seen as the LJL team that kind of got the asterisk in there? Or are they seen as a team that's good? Obviously, we're talking about super hypotheticals here.
Yeah. You need one super good game to recover it.
I'll also say there is a very easy narrative we're overlooking here that Peanut is in the play-ins with LGD. Blank, Peanut were rivals for years. They were on the same team for years. Blank was kind of better than Peanut for a while on the same squad and was replacing Peanut as the active member on T1. Peanut has now succeeded on LGD. Blank has been in the LJL, having kind of not made success in the LPL. That could make for a hell of a good storyline.
I think you better tell the casters that one, mate, because that one might definitely get overlooked, because I completely forgot about that. I'll be honest with you, mate. I'll be fucking honest. You should definitely hit up. Yeah.
That one's the one.
That's a big one.
Nymaera's right. They could be pretty boring. But there are a few threads you could pull which could make for a hell of a good narrative.
Yeah, and we have seen this team be a really cool late game team fighting team at points too. Appamend things. Right, there is that other side of it. I think we've done a relatively good job of characterizing this team. I enjoy casting them. I enjoy watching them. I mean, back in spring, I was like, hey, I was really high on this team. I thought they might even win. Right.
Yeah.
In fact, that's why they got they got second, went straight into the finals. Had 2 great series versus DFM. I just don't want to see them like they were against V3 in this last series, where they just kind of fall over. So
Yeah.
if you do that in groups, then they're just like instantly forgotten. You need one memorable game where you like. So I know that DFM had like their win versus Splice in last play-ins. That's really cool. You do that in groups versus someone memorable, as whichever representative it is of the LJL. You have to get there first, of course. That probably solves your issues already. So
True.
Yeah.
And lastly, gentlemen, what happens, or how far can V3 go for us as a region? What can they do? Because I'll be honest, my thoughts, outside of Boogie, V3 are more boring.
I kind of disagree.
Because
think
I
they play
actually-
fast-paced.
I think it's all due to Boogie. Because
Yeah, I mean,
outside of
Boogie,
Boogie, the team is very methodical in what they do. But that's not fun to watch. It's Boogie, watching Boogie run around the map for me. That's what makes the game super exciting for me.
You also have Reiner.
Yeah, I think you're right in
Reiner
some ways. I
helps.
think you think about it, but actually, they do play to let bot side
They
dive.
play
and
to
stuff.
win, and if you play boring, play to win. Right.
Archer and Reiner on say Thresh Callista with Boogie on Lee Sin.
Or
That's
the
an
Aphelios
exciting
games that
game.
Archers had.
And then,
The
but then, like,
few.
but then the thing is, Paz kind of just noodling away in the top lane, coming in with Ornn, and then
Or
Ace on
Sion.
Calm. The solo laners aren't necessarily the most exciting people. I think you've got a point. But I will say I think their bot lane and their jungle are pretty exciting, and I also think they are probably they are the best team in the league.
They're the most
pending
likely to
final
make
result.
it far.
They are,
That's a big
yeah.
thing.
I honestly, if V3, assuming V3 go to Worlds, assuming they are like we all expect, they're a lock. Also all the coaches when they gave their predictions, ladies and gentlemen, they all put V3 winning. Everyone's assuming V3 is going to win, regardless of whoever makes it to face them. I kind of also expect V3 to make groups. I don't know how far they'll make it after that, but
Yeah.
I think
they're
they're in the shop.
really fucking good at this game at the moment.
I think
So,
they have
if you-
got they've
if
got
you-
in like they've got enough star talent that and everybody else is serviceable enough to back that up. So they're really cohesive as a unit with a few really good raw mechanical talents to back it up. I think that's a good combination, generally speaking.
I also well, I was going to say something. What was I going to say? Also, like you had stuff like that 10 kill Callista game from Archer in group stage. No, in group stage
Sure.
in the yeah. So I think
Boogie gets
yeah,
like
the solo lanes are not
five
particularly dynamic. I also think that if you're going to get weird shit pulled out by a Japanese team in terms of picks, probably going to be someone like Boogie. And that stuff does get you pretty far. I mean, I guess you have that from Saros and stuff like that too, but I think V3 have got a high chance of pulling out something weird, and that's always going to bring you some viewers.
But the difference is, and this is no offense to Syros, the Heimerdinger or Ziggs, if it's not meta, or the Karma as well, if it's not meta, it's seen a little bit as a gimmicky thing. Similar with Ebby and his Gnar. Again, a little bit of a gimmick.
pocket pick.
Yeah, exactly. I want to mean it with all respect. Whereas when Boogie picks something like an Elise, that might be a comfort pocket pick for him. He's got exactly, Alex. He's gonna fucking dominate regardless. He could play Lee Sin and play it with all the LPL players and not give a fuck, but he could also turn around and do other stuff.
We haven't touched on it all this podcast, and I have been incredibly remiss, so I'm incredibly sorry. Evelyn is meta right now. The best solo queue Evelyn I have seen.
Yeah, and so yeah.
That's very true. I forgot about that. And yeah, and also remember that Boogie's also name dropping too, because this guy was, at MSI last year. He was Flash Wolves. It's not quite the level of Blank, absolutely not.
But let's be real. We've been pioneering how fucking good this guy has been for 2 splits in a row.
I mean, I've talked to some people and they're like, "Oh man, Boogie really wasn't very good last year." And I'm like, okay, first off, I'll contest that to a certain extent because he was still Flash Wolves, all this other stuff. And it's like, man, you gave away River, the guy who's like winning PCS now for Boogie. And I'm like,
yeah, we upgraded.
I think we kind of upgraded actually, looking on current form. River's been fun. He has been fun.
Yeah, he's still a good player.
You know what's also be great as well if you get to play-ins and you have PSG Talon versus V3, and you have the V3 junglers versus just like the XLMS jungler versus now the XV3 jungler. They've switched out. It's just great, man. It's just great. I think that we could be in for a bit of a crapshoot if we have like LGD and like Mad Lions in our group who've regained their form.
Yeah.
we could it's also Boogie's gonna have tough competition. At the very least, you've got Shadow from Mad Lions, who's probably the best jungler in EU. Versus and also
depends which series you take him off of, Sam.
What?
Oh, that's true, actually. Yeah.
That Rogue series, he was completely non-existent.
True, but he's been really good throughout the split. One bad series, I won't wait.
However, Sam, rookies at Worlds.
Yeah, true.
Rookies at Worlds.
Oh, yeah, this isn't a rookie at Worlds for Boogie. He got the MSI, right?
Which is why I'm like, okay, if Mad Lions are going to mental boom, they already did it
against us.
Series.
Do it against us.
That's a good chance. So I'm like, okay, so LGD are probably going to be fine. Mad Lions, some of the guys on Liquid will be, I mean, you've got Tactical, he might.
Lads, should we leak the script and say we're already getting second place, Mad Lions comes and face us, and we dumpster them?
Honestly, I think actually out of the pool 1 teams, I think we have, because we're overwhelmingly likely to get we're likely to get one of Mad Lions and Talon. You can steal a best of 1 versus them. The other two, I think LGD are maybe if you actually NA third, their laners are really strong, so I'm a little bit worried there. But I think Mad Lions, if they come in on that series kind of form, or Talon, I think we can take them.
Also, all the other minor regions, we're just going to dumpster them because it's the fucking LJL and we're these three lads. I mean, Unicorns in love? Don't know what you mean, lads. Legacy Esports? What's that?
Faced off against Seros Heimerdinger. Seros ended up in the dumpster within 5 minutes.
Exactly. That's not Ace on his karma where he's just trying to nullify a lane, not win a lane. There we go. We figured it out, lads. We don't try and beat oh my god, Ace versus Bjergsen. Bjergsen trying to carry and Ace just going, nah, I'm fucking off.
Billion.
Yeah, exactly. And Boogie running around.
Right. Anyway.
So, we think each of these teams could definitely bring something to us.
To suggest which team, having discussed all of them, I think for me it's still V3, but there is an argument
they're most likely to do well.
DFM.
Yeah. Also, I do think there's a bit of lethargy towards DFM, I guess now.
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
I'd agree.
If they go, they need to do well.
Okay, if I was going to take all variants into account, I would say CGA technically have the best chance of being our best ambassador. They're not going to Worlds, it doesn't matter, but I wanted to put the argument out there.
Sure.
V3 are the most likely for me to do well, and probably do well in a style that's enjoyable to watch, and they still have some name recognition.
Agree.
I wouldn't really split hairs between any of the top 3 if they were to do well, right? I think that's the
important thing.
But there are just some X factors in there, so I kind of go CGA, V3, DFM, Sengoku probably. So probably in that order.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think CGA, because if they just do that crazy stuff,
they have the chance to be absolutely
nuts. I wouldn't try, because I don't think they'd actually do it.
They just have to, Sam. They just have to do it once.
Well, they also no. They can't 0-4 Nymaera. If they 0-4, we don't even get it, and that could happen to CGA. They could also 4-0, which is just absurd.
And I think that would be a negative viewer experience. We might lose viewers at the end of that.
Yeah, we've got to try and convince people. Yeah, they just went 0-4, but come watch us. I insist, it's exciting, it's fun. And everyone's like, nah, we'll wait till next Worlds, and then we'll check in with you lads. We'll be like, fuck. Yeah,
I appreciate the argument, and I absolutely understand it.
Yeah, and I do also kind of appreciate the idea that they could also go 4-0 in the group on the playing stage and just go straight to groups, and I'd be like, yes, that's my boys. Aria just hard carried them in 4 games. That's my boys. I mean, my boy, but I mean Nymaera's boy more than anything, to be honest. But with that all said, gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our podcast. We will be covering the 2 games live, round 3 and finals live, over on our Twitch channel of LJL Officially Unofficial. You'll be able to find it in the show notes if you need a link to it, but just Google LJL Officially Unofficial, or look at just below me if you're watching the video, because it's just there. Just look with your eyes. We're covering it live, 9 o'clock British Standard Time. Or go onto the wiki page, as they have an automatic converter for your time zone. We'll be doing it live. Do not worry. With that also said, you can find all of our social medias and the LJL Officially Unofficial handles at Nymaera, at Initia1ise with a 1, and at MaskedSwan, and at LJL Unofficial. We also have a Discord server where we have been active, and we will continue having conversations with you regarding any and all things that happen League related, which has been more recently due to all the recent news that's been coming out. But for myself, Initia1ise and Nymaera, we thank you all for listening and watching. Take care, and we'll see you all very, very soon.